lava right now to deal with this. I'm just gonna let it go.
But, guys, I think we're here. We're live, brand new Poker Live podcast. My name is Joey. You're one Chicago Joey. We're doing a lot of content lately. We had some good stuff on the channel this week. We had Limitless, fresh off of his $1 million upswings, joined us on the podcast earlier this week. We also did a video on a story in the poker world right now of $108,000 being confiscated from a player, GGpoker. That story was up there. People have been talking about that a lot. Upcoming next week, we got Doug Polk on the podcast Wednesday. We got our final table shows we're doing every Friday. And we got my man, Kid Landon Tice, the 21-year-old, debatably the best 21-year-old in America right now. Debatably, we're going to find out. We'll see. Maybe there's other ones out there. But joining me today on the show is a man who just took down the event that we watched yesterday, the World Poker Tour Final Table. Me and Ike did a breakdown on. He's been around the poker world for a very long time. He did a tournament course on upswing poker that I know a lot of people out there gave a lot of feedback on. I've talked with a lot of people about that over the last couple of years. He's been playing the high stakes for a while. Very successful high stakes tournament player. I saw him hop in the high stakes cash games, the 501k, 2k games going on as well too this week as well. So we got a lot to talk about today. We got my man Nick Petrangelo on the show today. What's up, Nick? Welcome officially to the show.
Yeah, happy to be here. It's been figured we might have done this sooner since with upswing and stuff. But yeah, we're here and I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, man. How's it going? So it looks like you've had a kind of a crazy week. You've been battling a lot. You've been playing these really high stakes cash games. You took down the WPT event for 490K. So it seems like you are the quarantine. You're really getting in the mix, kind of battling a lot, playing a lot of poker.
Yeah, I've been playing a lot. Right when this all started, the quarantine stuff, we just got back from playing in Sochi, and then I basically since mid-March I started playing a lot of online poker, mostly tournaments to start. But yeah, now that this big cash game's running, I started playing that. I mean, I think it was running. I didn't know it was running at first, and then the tournament you talked about, that was a 3-day tournament and kind of took a lot out of me. So like I was out of I couldn't really hop in that thing until I think I started Thursday because that I played that 3K Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and I was just totally gassed. I'm in Europe, so like I was ending at 6 in the morning, and just like sleep schedule was totally messed up. But now I'm back on schedule. Playing that game. Didn't run today, but yeah, it looks like we might be able to play that for a little bit. I don't know.
So when you play that game, I mean 501k, 2k, that's one of the biggest cash games going on line right now. So what can you when you go into that, do you have to sell a lot of action for that, or are you just like gambling it up hardcore? Or what's kind of the approach to playing those kind of games?
Yeah, I mean just kind of sell down. It's different than tournaments, obviously. So sell pretty little reasonable piece, and depends too on if it's going to be the straddle game or if it's just 501k. The straddle game plays a lot bigger, obviously, so got to sell more for that. So I just have it set up so I have X amount sold if it just stays 501k, and then if it's 512, it's just the piece I sell goes up. And if it's a particularly good lineup, I'll just sell less.
Yeah, makes sense.
That's kind of where I'm at for that. And yeah, it's really it's probably counterintuitive for most people, but when you play deeper, like if you're playing like 501k, 250 blinds deep, there's a lot less variance because like you just don't get it in pre-flop, right? But when you're playing the 501k, 2k, you're playing 100. It's basically like playing 100 big blind poker, or maybe even if you get down from the max buy-in, you're down to like 70, maybe even 50 blinds, and then you pick up tens. You just kind of got to rocket it in there sometimes. And getting a huge flip. And so yeah, the shallow, the deeper game is less variance, and if you're playing 1k, the straddle game, you're kind of getting it in pre a bunch, because especially if you're four-handed or whatever, you're kind of in every hand. There's a lot of 3-betting going on. You got to get it in pre. It is what it is, and you kind of just gotta do the right move and not think about the stakes, and you get into some serious flips and hopefully run it 9 times or whatever. It's pretty crazy.
So when you play these big stakes though, are you able to kind of, are you still nervous? Is like the blood pumping, is the heart beating? Because I know if I'm playing higher stakes than normal, I'm like still pretty nervous. Even if I'm selling action to people, I'm still pretty nervous just because I'm not used to losing pots that size.
I'll be honest, I'm not thinking about the stakes as much as there's a lot of pressure in that game. Like if you're playing it, you're saying that you know how to play it and that you're playing well. And if you're selling action, people are expecting that. And it's a really competitive game. So, and everyone that's playing it, I think they're probably studying that format all the time when they're not playing it. They're checking every hand that they played. So, super competitive. You really don't want to make a mistake. So it gets the blood pumping from that perspective because you're like, this is super high stakes and I want to play as well as possible. I think money wise, you really need to be like, this is a video game and the money is the high score type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be like, oh, if I check raise this turn, that means I'm gonna have to bluff for 300K on the river. If you start thinking like that, you're dead. Right. So you got to do what's right. If your piece is big enough, or if you're playing not, if you're playing stakes that you don't feel comfortable making the right move when you have to like, bluff the river all in or whatever, then probably playing too high.
Right.
So it's probably not even the soft enough game to be shot taking in really. Cause like, I don't even like sometimes it's just a really tough game. And then at its best, it's a medium game. So I think that if you're at any, you shouldn't have like an outsized piece of yourself in that game, depending whatever that means for you individually. But I think bankroll management is super personal, and how much it means to you to go from X amount to Y or whatever is a
Mm-hmm.
is a big deal in terms of how you manage your pieces and stuff. So there's definitely some gangsters in there that are running it.
Yeah.
Not gonna
Right.
name names because I don't know if they care or not, but some badass guys that are just playing that game, not selling, and good for them. That's
Yeah,
not
man.
me though.
It seems like a very kind of old school poker feel to it, where you have guys willing to gamble and take a big piece of themselves. And I think a lot of people out there, they hear about pieces being sold, but they don't necessarily sell pieces to their own game. So the kind of whole entire concept of playing these really high stakes, selling action to people, it just seems like this unattainable thing for many people out there. But kind of the process is you would know people, you've been friends with people for a long time, they believe in your ability, you talk poker with them a lot, and those are the people that you usually sell action to, kind of like a business where they would be your investors in this business, and playing in this game is the business endeavor that you're doing.
Right, man. I mean, if they think you're winning, then they're not. You're working and they're using their money and they're not working and they're making some money hopefully and everyone's happy. So that that's how it should work hopefully. And if they accidentally invest in a losing player, unless they get lucky, I guess that's a bad deal for them.
Yeah, right. I guess we'll kind of, for your backstory, right? Why don't you tell people how long you've been playing poker for? When did you start playing poker?
In every interview, I always say this because it's the truth. I John Jaffe taught me how to play poker, if you know him,
Mm-hmm.
and so I started playing. I was normal story like playing low stakes or whatever with friends. But when I really started taking it seriously is when my roommate in boarding school happened to be his next door neighbor, and he was like, "Hey, my next door neighbor just dropped out of school because he's making like $40,000 a year playing heads up sit and goes." I was like, "Oh my god, I got to talk to this guy." And he was a legend at that time. I mean, he still is. So I just kind of hounded him, and I was like, "Yo, Mark told me your neighbor told me that you're making a living playing poker, and like I love poker. I'm obsessed with it. Like, how are you doing that?" And I was kind of annoying him, and he kind of showered me for a bit. But then, I watched him play a bunch, and we became friends. Started talking a lot, and then I watched him play for like years. I would go over to his house, and I would play the three rebuy, and he'd be playing like 4 or 5K heads ups at once or whatever. And I would just watch him, and he would help me and stuff, and it was great. And he was my first backer, first coach, and I was coached, backed by him, lived with him, stuff like that until I went on, until like 2014. So I started in 2006. So for like eight 8 years about.
Mm-hmm.
Just work with him. Never did 2+2. None of that stuff. Didn't really talk to anybody else. Just kind of like talked to this crazy heads up sit and go guy, and he backed me in tournaments, and we had a lot of success with that, and it was great. I probably should have gone on my own sooner because I was playing relatively low stakes, but he was helping me so much that it never even really occurred to me. We were kind of just doing like the bros thing. Like we're like, all right, cool, yeah, we're doing this.
Yeah, it makes sense. So basically, in retrospect, maybe you thought you could have made more money if you would have gone out on your own instead of being backed by him. But the value that you were getting from him in terms of mindset or strategy or just that accountability or someone to push you, that was worth the exchange in terms of staying with him.
I didn't think about it like that at the time. At the time, I just knew like he understood that. I mean, obviously, that was like the Wild West back then, where everybody was playing. It was like pure exploit. Even people that thought they were whatever theory based, like they weren't. Um, there was no tools. People were just kind of just show up and drop their nuts playing heads up or whatever and see who's just gonna go hard. So I mean, he was one of those guys, and he was great at it. And I just learned he understood. He just understood tendencies from people that weren't pros and even regs so well that I was learning so much from him. I just never. And also, he taught me to be super nitty, which was probably a good thing. I learned a lot of things. Like, he was really young and he never worked, and he was managing playing professionally. So like, I was learning all that stuff from him at the same time. So it just never really occurred to me to go on my own.
Mm-hmm.
In retrospect, I probably like when you're 23 or whatever, if you have a couple 100,000, you can afford to take shots and like play cash or whatever. But I was just content getting back, trying to move up like that. And it worked out, luckily. The smart thing to do would have been to like play six max cash or something, but I just love tournaments, and that worked. That was what was making me happy, and we were having a good time doing it. So, and I mean, I was still in college too, so it wasn't like I was playing full time, but I was playing a lot.
So after 2014, what happens then? You go out on your own. You start traveling around, playing live, playing higher stakes tournaments.
I traveled. I started traveling live a lot in 2012 because that was when. So basically, I moved to New York City after college because all my friends lived there that were working. They're mostly finance guys, so I just moved where they went because I was playing online and could go wherever I wanted, and that's still only like 3 hours from where I grew up, so it made a lot of sense. But then when after Black Friday, I couldn't play online there, so then I was just kind of like living somewhere that was really expensive and couldn't play. So we got a place in Montreal, and I went up there, and then it was kind of like online was way smaller, and I was like, all right, it's probably time to start traveling, playing live, going to EPTs and stuff. Before that, I was just playing like PCA and World Series of Poker, kind of staying around home because I had a lot of family stuff, a lot of friends. Like I wasn't doing, I wasn't really going through playing EPTs and stuff. I didn't want to be away from home from that long. But
Mm-hmm.
by 2012, it was pretty obvious if you wanted to have like a significant earn for the year, online tournaments wasn't going to be your thing. It was really small at that point. You could grind it, but I mean, it wasn't nearly what it was before. And the high stakes stuff for tournament players was live at that point.
Whereas now there's a lot more high stakes options to play, and there's multiple different sites where you can play big stakes tournaments. There's a lot of big stakes payouts. Like, I mean, this WPT event was $32 buy-in with a $490,000 first place. So it seems like there's more events like this over the year that a great tournament player is able to play and make a lot more money now than they could back then.
And we have GG for the last couple of years where you can play stuff that's quick and big buy-ins, which is amazing for high stakes pros because like your hour, you know what I mean? Like, you don't want to be playing 16-hour tournaments or whatever. The quick high stakes stuff is great. Back then, after Black Friday, it was really small, long tournaments, which is just a really bad combination for your hourly. So you just you were grinding all day, and your EV was lower and stuff like that. So it was just time to start playing live. And you said what happened in 2014. It was like, so I started playing live and pretty quickly started having some results. And then in 2015, I had a massive year, and that was kind of that was kind of when I got into the solver stuff. So it was good timing both ways. Like, I wouldn't necessarily say I had a massive year because I was doing a bunch of work, but having done the work and then having made some extra money, I was able to, play higher and be confident at that level that I could play in the super high rollers. Cause like, I thought my skill level got a lot better between like the player I was between 2014 and 2016 was like insanely different. So it was good timing that I had a little bit more money to jump up in stakes when I thought I was ready for it. And I had some guys that would buy my action that kind of believed in me that were, from the start, kind of buying my action. And the first few events that they did buy action went well. So then from there, it was just a great relationship. And I just kind of never stopped playing the big stuff after that.
So since that point in time, 2016 till now, you've been playing a lot of the regular high rollers, the super high rollers, the online high stakes, and has that sort of been your approach these past couple of years? Is just grind those high stakes
Yeah.
tournaments consistently?
Yeah. I think my first 25K was in like 2012. That was when I was still playing with John. And then I had a couple of big online years there, even though I was playing a little bit live, and I was not too many live results. But then 2015, I had a bunch of live results, and then that was when I started selling to the German guys that used to buy a bunch of action. Johnny and Hendrik, I was real close with them. Everyone knows them. And we had a really good relationship, and I just basically only sold to them and played everything. My first 100K was in 2015. Yeah, and I don't think I missed one for 4 years or something. I just played everything. I played every stop, every super high roller. I just kind of was really into it. Like,
Hardcore in the grind, right? Very, very poker focused.
just like wasn't gonna let a big tournament happen without being there. If yeah, that was kind of how I felt. I would be annoyed if something big was going on and I wasn't playing. So
Diesel in the chat said, "What's going on with your beard, Joe?" So my beard, I'm trying to get it like Nicky P's over there. He's got this like full beard. It's looking like there's a fucking like a bear on his face right now, like a cuddly bear. And I'm trying to get my beard like that. And he's got the hair. I mean, I feel like your hair and your beard are they're. I mean, look at that. Yeah, it's like.
I mean, this is only about a month after being kind of like down almost to the floorboards.
What do you mean? The beard was down to the floor?
Down to the floorboards, like I almost clean shave it.
Oh, okay. So this is 1 month in. This is what your beard looks like.
About a month, yeah. But I oiled it up for you guys today.
It's
I just
oiled
oiled it up before. Yeah, a little glisten. It's not glisten, little glisten in there for you.
I can see it. It looks pretty good.
I don't have any beard like shaper with me, like any cream or anything. Like I just have the oil. But the oil is essential if you actually do end up growing whatever you got going on there. If you get some body to it, you're gonna need to start oiling it up. You don't need to oil that thing yet.
What does the oil do? What does that do?
It just makes it so it's not dry.
Oh, mine is dry for sure. No, mine's very dry right now. That makes sense.
You need the oil every day.
Oh, is there a certain kind of oil you got to get for your beard?
I don't know if I'm not like sponsored by Kiehl's or anything, but yeah, Kiehl's is the move.
All right, Kiehl's oil is the move.
Kiehl's beard oil, yeah.
All right,
ideally what you do is you oil it, then you brush it down, throw some balm in it for some shape, and then you're good. But I got no one to shape it for either right now. I'm not even leaving the house, so oil it up to keep it nice and nice.
So what have you been doing with the quarantine? Are you just kind of inside, grinding a lot, playing a lot of poker?
So before this cash game started, which I haven't played too much yet, but I've been spending my time preparing for it. I was really only playing Sundays, and I got really into biking. Mm-hmm. So when I was in Vegas, actually in March, I got really into biking. There's some amazing mountain biking in Blue Diamond. I've been into mountain biking for a long time, but that's when I started really putting down like 4 or 5 rides a week, getting in better shape. And then when I got here to Europe, I've been going maybe 3, 4, or 5 times a week, pretty intense rides. It's great. So do that in the morning, try to do that every day. Like in July, I did like 23 days out of 30 or something.
Mm-hmm. So you're going pretty hard. So you're kind of like, you got your poker you're playing once a week now, it sounds like. And then outside of that, you're challenging yourself in the biking, you're pushing yourself, you're trying to get better, You're trying to get in better shape and trying to just see what you can achieve there.
And mountain biking is sick because it's like I've tried the meditation stuff. It's not for me. I'm not like ADD or like super. I'm pretty chill and laid back. But for whatever reason, I don't get motivated to meditate. Like I can't. If I do it, I did it a little bit, but it's not my thing. Mm-hmm. I tried, but mountain biking is like at a lot of points it's so tough. and you're alone, like you're not looking at your phone or anything. You're just like in the woods by yourself. It's so tough that you're not thinking about anything. So it's sort of like a forced meditation for that. And there's long periods of time where it's like that. There's 30, 40 minute climbs or whatever where it's just brutal. And it kind of, I think I'm, like I said, I'm not a meditation guy, but I think like I love the biking stuff, and it does just naturally kind of give you a lot, like a good amount of time where you can think about nothing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it gets you into flow quite easily because you're so focused on not potentially dying on some of these trails where you're pretty locked in. So you're not thinking about poker or thinking about the problems
Oh
that you
yeah,
have outside of
yeah.
that.
No, it's great. I mean, I'm not like super advanced by any point, by any means, but I'm like, I've been improving a lot, and it's great. It's my top hobby right now. I'm a big golfer actually, but it's pretty annoying to play golf when we're traveling right now. So I just kind of put that aside. If I was home in Massachusetts where I live, I would be golfing every day and maybe mountain biking once a week or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm doing the opposite here, and that's been good for my my physique, I'd say, because the golf is not necessarily putting down like 10 beers when you're golfing and not really doing too much else,
That's
riding the cart around.
So people in the chat not only seem confused that a professional poker player doesn't meditate, but also that you go in the woods by yourself. So when you're biking, you're biking by yourself. You're going through these
Oh
trails, or
yeah,
what?
yeah. I mean, I go with my brother-in-law and stuff sometimes,
Uh-huh.
but it's actually not that common of a hobby because it's kind of miserable. It has a barrier to entry that is very miserable because no matter if you're like a sick athlete or in good shape, it's just like a different kind of shape, and it's also kind of scary and stuff. So like sometimes, so a lot of people, you can't just grab your buddy and be like, "Hey, let's go mountain biking," because their first ride, they literally like almost 90% of people never have fun. So
Okay,
you
so
need to
it's that
go with
grueling.
somebody
Yeah,
that's like,
yeah.
so then they're just like, "Oh fuck that, that wasn't fun," and I'm like, "I promise you that after the next 5 times, the sixth time we go, it's gonna be sweet." But they're like, "Yeah, I'm not. It's not gonna happen."
Yeah.
So many friends and my girlfriend included, they just like did one ride and quit. But my brother-in-law is like a lifelong mountain biker. He's the reason I'm in it. He's taught me a lot about it. Like I'll go with him, but I like going by myself. And I mean, you got your phone in your backpack. Unless you even, I don't. There's just not that. There's people on the trails. It's not like you're, you know, in the middle of northern Alaska. Like you're going to places where people are hiking and biking and stuff. So it's not like dangerous to go in the woods by yourself, but it's really good. It's amazing. I'm happy. I mean, that's a big positive I've taken out of the last few months is like when I had to figure out how I was going to spend my time, I really kind of dialed that one up, and I love it. And it's a good way. I mean, you can go for 2 hours, 4 hours, even longer rides.
Mm-hmm.
Some people it's just a lifestyle for them. So it's awesome.
So have you picked up any other habits, or have you noticed that your mindset's changed at all during the quarantine and kind of being away from people and less traveling? And so is there anything that you say, okay, maybe I want to approach my life a little bit differently now than I was approaching it 5 months ago?
Uh, it was a really hectic year for me socially before this. So I had just all my friends decided to get married and have their bachelor parties in the same year, pretty much. Like I was traveling all over the place for. I had before this happened. I had a bachelor party in Scottsdale, and then I had to fly to uh, Zurich. We had a ski trip, and then after that, we went to the Dominican Republic, and it was like similar group of guys. It was like bang bang. And then I went to Sochi for poker. So during this time, I'm kind of like, yeah, maybe like all these crazy social obligations, like cutting, not having those going on. Like I love all these guys, and it's been super fun. And I would always go to them if they happen again. But not having the social obligations has been quite a relief in terms of like social stress. Because at the end of the day, like I have a bunch of buddies and stuff, but I really do. I like my alone time. I like obviously playing poker and doing my own thing a bunch, and going out at this point and stuff like that is not really my thing. So if I had to reflect on something, it would be like confirming that, yeah, going out and doing all this stuff like that. That's not really for me anymore, and I really like kind of being a homebody, honestly.
Yeah, I think I took that same thing away the first couple months when no one was going outside. My life seemed to be a lot more peaceful because I was putting a lot of pressure on myself before that to go out more and to do more things. Whereas before that, I did just like staying at home a decent amount because I was doing stuff and traveling for so long, for so many years. So finally, when I had said, okay, well, I can't go outside in some ways, then my life became a lot more simpler. And now that there are more things happening and there are more social obligations and more opportunity and things to do, it's become a lot more challenging to be able to balance that. So I can understand from your perspective how you now have this peacetime and you kind of pick up some new habits, some new hobbies, and you say, well, those social obligations were a lot of fun, but at the same time, they were really draining. And I guess now when you think about how are you going to change in the future, right? Is it that you maybe cut back on those social obligations or you those relationships weaken? Because I know that we all value the relationships that we have with our friends as well too.
Yeah, I think it's just not, understanding you don't have to say yes to everything, which that's been my thing like forever. Just I'm just always like, yeah, well, yeah, like if anyone's like, hey, we're gonna go do this, I'm like, you want to come? It's like, yeah, sure, I'll be there. Never say no to anything. And it's like at this age, at this point, like it's okay to say no. No one's gonna care. All my friends that I have, like they've been my best friends for like 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, you just got to understand that these guys, when everyone's out late night, like no one knows you're not there. Like when I was on some of these bachelor parties, me and one of my other buddies, it's kind of similar to me. We were just like, everyone's like, all right, yeah, it's time. Like it's like midnight or 11, and we had already been drinking and skiing all day or whatever the hell we were doing, and everyone's like, all right, it's time to go to the bars. And we're like, yeah, we'll see you guys there. Like we'll be there real soon. And it's like, dude, can we go to bed, please?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So we were already kind of
Well, I think
easing our way
like a lot
out
of
of
those
it.
habits are defined when we're younger, and we kind of do those things. We go out real late, and then as you get older, you keep kind of trying to keep up with those habits and keep up with that. But you evolve as you get older, and you start to realize more about what you like and what you don't like. And there's a lot of social pressure when you're younger to do these things. And as you get older, you get better at handling that social pressure, and you decide, well, maybe I don't necessarily want to do things like that. And that's where you start to make some decisions and possibly changes in your life. And those aren't very easy or comfortable decisions or changes to make.
Yeah, my ideal thing is like hanging out with the boys all day, play golf or something like that. In bed 9, 10 o'clock. Get my good 9, 9, 10 hours of sleep. Next day, start it up again. I don't need to be out all night. That's for sure.
Yeah, right.
So
I mean, it sounds
yeah,
like you've kind of got a good, nice approach to kind of how you'd like to live your life right now. Is this sort of the life, the style that you're on right now? Is this what you'd like to potentially live for the foreseeable future in terms of being active during the week and not as much social kind of activities going on during the week, and then being able to play poker on Sundays, and then being able to play poker whenever else poker comes up until live poker comes back?
yeah. I mean, that's what I've been doing for a long time. Like 2 years ago now, I bought a house in Canmore. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's in Alberta, like next to Banff National Park
I've heard
in
of it before.
Alberta. Yeah, so straight north of Vegas, up in Canada, and it's just kind of like an out, like kind of similar to like Whistler, but way lower scale. But like it's a ski town, bunch of mountain biking, skiing, whatever, in the Canadian Rockies. So yeah, when I'm up there, I mean, it's just me and my girlfriend. We've got the house. We're chilling, do some mountain biking, hike, whatever. She's big into nature photography. Like we don't know anyone up there, obviously, because we moved to Western Canada. So like, there's no one's being like, hey, let's go out tonight. I mean, we'll go do our own stuff. And so when we're up there, it's a real nice break from stuff like that. Can still play online poker from there, and do whatever work on poker or coaching I want to do. But yeah, so I've kind of been going in that direction for a while now, where that's part of the reason. One of the reasons we bought the house is just because that's kind of what we were doing during off time, was trying to figure out a destination, whether it was going to like Yosemite or Sequoia National Park, doing a little road trip and out there, just like be by ourselves, kind of get away from it, do some stuff outside. And then we bought the house, so we don't take those trips anymore. We just go to the house and do it up there. But yeah, generally the trend has been, when we have off time, kind of do our own thing, maybe visit either her family or my family, but we kind of do more of the same, play some golf. But yeah, so that's I kind of been doing this for a long time now.
Yeah, it sounds like a peaceful way to kind of approach things.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, that's what I like, and yeah, it's pretty sad that we're not able to get back to our house in Canada right now because okay, the border's closed. So really waiting for that to open up because I haven't been to my house since February.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any sort of outlook on when that might happen, or has there not any reports on when they
No,
might
they just
open up the
keep pushing
borders?
it back. There's a lot of political tension in terms of when that border will open because it would be kind of like obviously Canada has cases very well managed, and the United States, I guess, is on the opposite end of that spectrum currently, as we know. So
Mm-hmm.
they don't really want to open it up for obvious reasons. So we'll see what happens. But they just pushed it back another month today, which I think was obvious. I wasn't even thinking that would be an option. It was supposed to, like they put it was August 21st was like the most recent official date before they moved it today to September 21st. But it could just be until January or something.
Well, I imagine what's happening is that they're going to keep pushing it back and pushing it back and pushing it back until some sort of vaccine-related thing is found or discovered or used, and maybe when the borders do
Okay.
open, there'll be a lot of restrictions and you have to go into quarantine for 14. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a simple solution at this point in time. So, which really does suck, and that's sort of the way I've been approaching my outlook and trying to plan my life and say, well, if the world's going to be a lot different, do I want my approach to be the same as it's been in the past, or do I potentially want to find a different approach too? And do I want to stay in America? Do I want to go outside of America? Do I want to get the hell out of this place? Like, what's going to happen here? There's all sorts of
Yeah.
really unknowns right now. I've done a lot of research on it too, but I'm trying to stay focused on poker right now. But it's pretty crazy the kind of stuff that's happening out there. And I guess how are you approaching that now? Are you just planning to stay outside the country for a while and see what happens here, and you're just kind of wait and see?
Where we've been in Europe between Austria and Bratislava, in Slovakia, and then we did a couple trips in the mountains and stuff. I mean, it's pretty much normal life because they took really extreme measures, particularly in Slovakia, where my girlfriend's family is from. Um, they immediately when things happened, they were doing like mandatory state quarantine. Like you actually get bussed into like a dormitory and you live there for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't messing around, you know. And then that proved to be very effective. And people listened. People like when the government says to do something, they just do it, right? I mean, I don't know if that's a symptom or a result of being an ex communist country where like the government, you know, like you just listen to what the government says, which
Mm-hmm.
I mean makes sense that the government's just like, okay, you need to wear masks, you need to go to this dormitory and live there for 2 weeks with strangers and we're going to give you your food and you can't leave. Okay, do that for 2 weeks. Like we follow the rules. And now there's very, very low cases compared to other places. So in terms of being in Europe, yeah, I mean, it's great here. But I can only stay here. I mean, I have to leave because you know my visa is going to run out anyway. And where I'm from in Western Massachusetts, there's very low cases. It's not near any major cities, and everyone's being pretty responsible too. So that's where I'll be going back to. And I want to see my family and stuff. But yeah, where we are now, it's pretty normal. And then when I get back to Western Mass, I think it's more, you know, more of the same. It's kind of normal, just wear a mask in public. But you know, my parents kind of live in the middle of nowhere, so I'm not really worried about making any changes there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I haven't been thinking about too many adjustments because the place I am now and the place I will be, like people are being pretty responsible and stuff's cool. When I was in Vegas, people were just acting 100% normal and restaurants opened real early and stuff. And,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, it's kind of crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty normal out here right now in Vegas still. I mean, there's still a lot of people out. The casinos are pretty crowded. The restaurants are all pretty crowded too. So, yeah, people are definitely approaching things a bit different here. Yeah. So let's kind of talk some
Yeah. I
poker.
mean,
Let's kind of talk some poker stuff because if I get in this stuff, I'll be talking for a while. And I know a lot of people want to hear about some poker related things with you. So what are
you're the
kind of
boss,
your
man.
what are
Let
kind of
me
your
know.
thoughts on the state of these games right now, man? You've been playing a lot of the high stakes games, high stakes
Yeah.
tournaments. What are kind of your thoughts in the poker world right now and the poker tournament world?
I think it's great that I mean, so there's never been more high stakes available to play across a bunch of different platforms and games. And that's great. I think obviously that's partly because everyone, you know, we can't play live, but also just live poker was getting bigger and better. I mean, better is relatively speaking, like more big events, and short deck was blowing up, and they were starting to put more like 250Ks, 100Ks, running more. It looked to me, I don't play a lot of them just because of the travel and where I am, but like a lot of the WPT main events and stuff, those things were massive before live got shut down. So seems really healthy. These online events, like anything that's like lower than 5K, they're huge.
Mm-hmm.
GG, like Sundays are great. Um, Party, the stuff has been tougher, but they did some really good stuff in the spring. They had some really good events. Particularly like the first event, like in April, Poker Masters. I think online Poker Masters was a huge success. Like they were running 2 10Ks and 25Ks every day, getting good fields. The structures were perfect. They mimicked the ARIA structure. So I think in terms of like tournament organization, schedule, the structures, everything's so much better than it used to be. There's still obviously things regs are going to complain about stuff all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but there's so much to play. I mean, you can for the amount of money that you can invest at every stake on a Sunday now is just insane compared to what it used to be. I used to be considered like a high stakes online reg playing like 7K in buy-ins on a Sunday.
Right.
And now it's like you can get in 200K. Like what? Yeah, it's crazy. Like it wasn't possible. So obviously it's gotten massive. And I mean, I'm not. I have no affiliation with GG whatsoever, and no incentive to pump their tires. And I know that they've got some other shit going on with this confiscation stuff. But in terms of tournament stuff, like I couldn't ask for a better. I mean, for 2 years they've been running great stuff. I mean, we had I don't know if you followed, but like in the fall last year, we played, I don't know, sometimes 25Ks in a day.
Yeah, I saw that.
For
Yeah,
like
that was
two
crazy stuff.
months. I mean,
Well,
so
okay.
yeah,
So the
that's
question a lot of people have is how are all these high stakes buy-ins sustainable? If there's so many high stakes tournaments, do eventually the players end up running out of money to be able to play the events?
only if they're being dummies.
Hmm.
Like, I mean, like, yeah, you shouldn't run out of money. If you do, you probably made a mistake and didn't fix. Like, it's fine. It's shot take. Like, say if you're, I don't know what buy-in you're like. Give me a hypothetical buy-in where average buy-in where someone's running out of money, and I'll tell you.
Let's say
So
the
like,
10K to 25K.
yeah, say you're shot taking on GG because you think the Sundays are amazing, right? Or your party or stars or whatever has these big high stakes things going, like, and you started with some amount that you felt comfortable with, like, I don't know, not selling. Started with $1 million and you're not selling, and you're like, these games are so soft. I'm trying to run it up. I don't know. At some point, you need to adjust that to be like, I'm going to sell, or I wouldn't say swapping is the answer here, just because like swapping can hurt when you're kind of underrolled for it. So say you just brick the first like 3 Sundays and you're down to 400K. All right, you that was irresponsible to start with, but now you're done. Like, you got to sell. You got to do something. Get some
Mm-hmm.
markup. Start risking $2,500 a tournament. Have 10% of yourself in 25Ks if you want. Sell the rest at 1.03. Pick up some cash, variance free. Grind more of the small stuff that you weren't when you were shot taking. Like, I just can't get behind anyone saying like, oh, this is gonna break poke. It's only gonna break guys that are super irresponsible.
Right.
Like, I don't understand, how is it gonna. You're in control of this. No one's telling you that. Okay, here's the Sunday schedule. You have to play it every single week. Like, it's mandatory. If you play once, you have to play it 10 times. That's not how it works.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you don't have to play. You don't have to. The way you manage things is like, if you want to shot take, you shot take. But then it's like, how much is this going to hurt my future EV at a certain point? So you can shot take if losing doesn't hurt your ability to earn, or it doesn't hurt your ability to earn in that much. But now you're talking about shot taking where it's taking your ability to earn to like zero, and then you have to find a backer, which, like, there are some backers for great players, but they're not really out there. I mean, yeah, I think if you make the argument that high stakes is going to break people, it's just it's going to be their fault.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, we see a lot of people. I think we see some people kind of talk about how with the influx of the higher buy-in tournaments, then eventually people are going to run out of money, right? Or tournaments going to start overlaying or these kind of things like that. But it sounds to me like you think that there is plenty of money out there. There are plenty of people who are buying pieces, who are buying action. And the state, it's only going to get better and better because it is kind of on the upswing trend here. It seems like there's more bigger events, bigger prize pools, bigger everything.
I don't necessarily think that about online 25Ks right now. Like they've been small and tough, and maybe there's not the appetite for buying that kind of action. But good online 10Ks on Sundays and stuff, and 5Ks, I think that there's more than enough appetite for buying action. And as professional poker players go longer in their career, the idea was to accumulate money, right? So I think more guys are rolled for it now than they would have been, and
right.
I think you need to have the high stakes because the people that at this point, too, the people that are playing for fun, there's a certain group of people that want to play for fun for 5K plus, or they don't play at all.
Right.
So what are you going to do for those guys if you start shrinking the stakes because regs are complaining that it's too high?
Mm-hmm.
I don't get that. If it's too high for a reg to run his staking farm or whatever, like stake it lower stakes players.
Right.
Don't play.
Chip Herm in the chat said, talk about baby corn and solving and twisting. What does that mean? Is that something out of line?
Baby corn is more, a nickname for my peen, which has had 2 WSOP bracelet pictures with the bracelet on it.
Baby corn.
Yeah.
Okay.
I gotta admit that. I mean, I wouldn't have brought it up myself, obviously. But baby corn gets it. If I have a little bit of a big night out with the boys, it usually kind of makes an appearance. Baby
corn does.
Yeah. Like Sam Soverell saw a good one at Seminole Hard Rock. I took somebody else's trophy picture with baby corn.
You took the trophy, or you took the trophy picture?
Trophy picture with the trophy and baby corn at the circle bar at Hard Rock. Soverell was kind of appalled. He didn't like that. He liked it, but he was worried.
What was he worried about?
Thought we were going to get kicked out or arrested. Which, actually, looking back,
surprised he didn't.
Well, 2016 now, I don't know if I would take my peen out at a bar in 2020.
You think they're a little stricter now with the recent COVID developments?
Or just I don't know. They could turn that into.
Who knows what could happen, right? I mean, never know what could happen. Yeah. So 2016 different year.
Andrus, he won the 25K, and I kind of took a little picture of his trophy there. What else do you want to talk about? Twisting
and solving, and twisting.
He's always trolling me about. He's been talking to me about. He was saying PO solve, I'm going to PO solve you before it even came out. And he's definitely never. He hates it. He hates PO solver, and he's totally against. He never opened it, but he says he's going to PO solve people. He just loves it.
Yeah.
He's a legend. He's a guy. We talk about me learning from John Jaffe. Chirp Herm invented a lot of MTT plays that are still prevalent today.
Like what are some of those that stand out?
Like small 3-betting in position all the time. Probably defending really wide against min raise, bluffing with no equity because you're savage. That's why he won all the tournaments for 5 years before when I first started 2007 and 2010 or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he was kind of doing all those things back then that people were doing that are starting to do now.
Yeah, just all the great exploit stuff and all the good tournament stuff.
Yeah.
Reflop stuff and stuff like that. But yeah, he's just fucking massive troll at the same time trying to get.
Yeah, I know. We got a 25 HRK donation in the chat. I actually do not know what HRK denomination is, but I thank you for that. He says, Joe, can you ask if Nick does any visualization before majors? Thank you. Yeah, are you big into visualization? Are you in the shower? with baby corn, like take it in your victory for
No,
the day and the
I
trophy
mean
you're
I
gonna take
have
with baby corn later,
I.
or what?
It's impossible to be in the shower without baby corn. Like physically impossible. Like he's always there. But no, man, I'm not a visualization guy. And to be honest with you, like when I'm playing, and when I'm not, I'm not. I'm kind of. I think it's too much. Like it's so hard when you're playing to be focused, like to do all this. These fucking guys, I don't know. Their guys are always meditating and eating all the perfect shit and stuff. Like that's like a full. I mean, poker's already a full time job before you add all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not into that, to be honest with you.
So no visualization, no in the shower,
No,
holding baby corn, thinking about how you're going to dominate the later tournaments that night, and take a nice picture to send to the group chat with the victory photo or anything like that.
I do no. When I'm playing, I play. I do my own things, I guess. Like in live tournaments. Like I don't want to be hanging out with people and stuff before I go play like a big live tournament. But I mean, you see it all the time with the best players that are playing when they're playing super high stakes. Like between hands and stuff, they're like talking, laughing, joking around. And I think part of it is like in any sport. I mean, if you're like intentionally trying to focus the entire time, you're just gonna totally gas yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Like you can't just be like, I'm gonna perfectly prepare for 4 hours for this tournament, and then I'm gonna play perfectly for 12 hours with dead focus, and then I'm gonna get perfect sleep and do my. I mean, what do you mean? You're gonna just be completely dialed in for maybe Jason Kuhn, the only guy that can do that. I can't do that, and no, I can't, so I don't try to.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the best poker I've played is when I'm a total mutant, like just when I just play poker all day, and when I'm done I do whatever feels like it'll make me relaxed and happy. So if that means eating like a bowl of mashed potatoes, then going to bed, like that's what I'm gonna do. I can't speak for him, but I mean I think Ike's similar way, and he's a legend. Like we've talked about it, where it's just kind of like I don't know, when you play, and when you're jet lagged and tired, just eat a bunch of food and try to go to bed. I mean, you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
not
so
that
you're not
complicated. I
worried
try
about
to.
optimizing like perfect chicken and vegetables at nighttime, and not using the compute, not using your phone before you go to bed, and eating your green smoothies and those kind of things like that. You're just kind of like, I got to calm the fuck down. How do I do this? What the fuck can I do to calm down here?
Yeah, and also just kind of like I already said, it's just for me personally, it's too much. It's because you're draining yourself before you even play. For me, draining yourself before you play, draining yourself after, having all these strict things. Like your brain only has so much capacity for discipline, and if if you're not naturally someone that's just a total savage, like if you're exercising, like forcing yourself to be disciplined, like on both ends of a job that requires you to be disciplined for your decision making the entire time, you're going to run out of your capacity to do that at some point, right? And I don't want it to be while I'm playing poker. I'd rather have my capacity for discipline stop when I'm done playing and I just eat something shitty or have too many beers.
Mm-hmm. Well, we know you like to drink at the beer reviews. I don't know what happened in those videos. You took them off Twitter. What happened, buddy? You're like a up. It was like an up skirt, like a up chest kind of. The shirt, the hair was wild. I mean, what happened to those
I didn't
videos?
take them off Twitter. I don't even know how to use Twitter.
Who
The
where
only
the who posted? Maybe it was Darren who posted the videos then, right?
Yeah, but he wouldn't take them off either. He like watches them with his daughter for fun.
Okay. I mean, they are pretty great videos. I got one I posted
It's
before. It's a beautiful
she,
video.
she loves it. They're like, all right, let's watch Uncle Nicky P's beer blog videos, and she's like, haha, Uncle Nicky P, he drinks too much beer.
Do
It's
you
just
have like a secret YouTube channel of beer reviews, and you're like a big beer review influencer? We don't know about this, or what? Have you been hiding it from the
no,
poker community?
the way that was, I swear. I mean, it seems like it could have been planned because it ended up being great buzz marketing for Upswing. It happened to be at the same time, and then we used it for the ads, right? So that was great for us. But I swear that all those originated, and also the one that's like a W, like I did a funny video before W Coop Sunday one time. That
Yeah,
was like
yeah.
a troll video. Those all originate from me sending a personal text message to Darren just to be funny between the boys. And then he decides, without telling me, to just blast them to the masses, you know? So he's still got some in the pipeline, honestly,
Oh, he's
that
got
he
other
hasn't
videos.
released
He's just
yet.
waiting to unleash, huh?
So most of those, every single time, it's just like a personal text message that isn't, it's not like me doing takes for to send it out on my Twitter. It's Darren, really. He's kind of my
He's your content
publicist.
guy. He's like your marketing guy, your content
My
guy.
buzz. He's my buzz marketing guy.
Yeah. And then, so you talk about doing the upswing course. So what made you want to do that upswing tournament course?
Actually, Connor Drennan hooked me up with that. I think they asked him, and he was just like, "I don't want to do it, but Nick would be good." Um, I was actually, yeah, I was playing a lot online. That was like in March of 2017. I was in Mexico playing a lot online. Connor texted me and was just like, "Hey, would you do this?" And I kind of already had a lot of the stuff, like the nuts and bolts stuff that I would need for my own play, like my own study, pre-flop stuff, and PO, solutions and shit. I had been doing a lot of work for that, and that was like right before we were gonna go to Macau and play big, and they were like, "Yeah, we need it we want to release it before W Cube, so we want it by like next August." And I was like, "Whatever I have to do, I can figure it out by next August." So sure, it's March, like
Yeah.
that's fine. So, but classic, me, I waited until like a really long time to do it, and then it was really stressful.
That's what all poker players do. I mean, I'm working on like 10 projects right now since I came back to making a lot of poker content, and I've never been more stressed out in my entire life right now. So I
Yeah,
definitely understand the procrastination. You put things off, and you're like, and it's kind of, you're doing something you don't necessarily know how to do. So you understand poker, and you can explain poker and teach these things, but you've never really made a training course where you have to have these things itemized and organized here, and have a plan for the course. I mean, it's a lot of shit you got to figure out. So I can understand why it
yeah.
would be super stressful for you.
I mean, the reason why I want to do, obviously, I know it pays well, and then I was kind of like, I had always coached privately, and I kind of, like I said, I had a bunch of the stuff, and then I was like, well, I mean, I'm studying a bunch. This is kind of be like I'm getting paid to study, because obviously explaining anything, even if it's a concept you know really well, you're going to get better. So what I didn't realize was, so I'm looking at all these things that I completely understand intuitively, and then I'm like, okay, I got to make a 30-hour class. So when I finally got around to really starting to put the stuff together after just having the raw materials that I had to make it from, I had a full blown like breathing heavy panic attack. Like, oh my god, am I not gonna be able to do this? Because I did about, it takes you about 8 minutes on camera to explain work that took 2 hours to make and 2 hours to understand.
Right.
So I'm sitting there like, okay, this is going to be the video on c-betting dynamic boards. And I look at it, I'm like, this is going to be a good like 45-minute video. And then I explain everything that I have prepared. And it literally takes like 10 minutes. And I'm like, holy shit, this is going to be really bad. Because I don't have, you know, thousands and thousands of hours of content here to boil down. It's just like not going to work. And then I figured it out in the end. And I mean, it's not perfect, but people like it and it's okay. And I think good balance of not ruining poker, but helping people get better.
Yeah, I mean, that's the question I always think about these things, right? Is I have a lot of content I can make that would be very, very good in terms of helping people get a lot better. But at the same time, right, if I know if I'm teaching people how to use these solvers, right, like that, I don't know if that can be the best thing, because where does the game evolve after we go there, right? Is there a next evolution to the game, or because obviously we always say that, right? Like, oh, it's getting harder, but do you get much work? Where can it go past the solver route, right?
I think, like, for one, you could give everyone in poker that is even like regs, like all the answers right now. It still wouldn't affect a lot of guys because some people just play every day and don't put the study in. Some people study really inefficiently. Some people just don't want to do it. Like, people have lives, families, whatever. Like, it's still, no matter what, even if you have like perfect answers, it takes a shit ton of work, right? And then your
Mm-hmm.
brain you have to execute it in game. You have to put the work in every day. You got to figure out what you're doing wrong. I mean, you have to manage the frequencies, right? So there's so much more that goes into it. Like, so I really don't buy into the fact that it's just like, oh, the solver's going to kill you. It's just like, you still have so much work to do. You still deal with people that play completely off tree. You can do stuff to exploit people a bunch, and it's good. It's really good. I mean, you can You can either overfold or overbluff or whatever, and it's great versus population. These things are just really, really hard to execute. So I just don't worry about it too much. That being said, the reason why you need to make poker training courses that are solver based now is because they exist. So anyone like from the customer's perspective, you need to have tangible, concrete, nuts and bolts things, or it's not marketable, right? You can't make a poker course that's like, hey, this is what I think about the turn betting. It's like you got to show people stuff. You want to see charts, you want to see like some stuff to back up what you're saying and explain it. But do I think that's the best way to play? No, I mean not at most stakes. Like in the stuff that I play, you got to play like that a lot. But even still, no one's doing it perfect. You make huge mistakes all the time, and it's super tough to execute. So like, solver is a good way to understand poker, and then you use it as your baseline, and just like do whatever you want from there. And if you're good at understanding what people are up to, you can get really good using that kind of approach.
So I guess for the training course you put up there, it's very, very solver based, and because I've been in the 2-card pot limit law straights, but then I've been trying to learn more of the 2-card PLO, but then when I start to study more Hold'em, I just go back to playing a lot of PLO cash games, which is totally different. So it's like it's hard for me to kind of get in the groove of studying tournaments without wanting to also play a ton of PLO cash games, and kind of balance those studying has been a little bit challenging for me to want to do. So with the tournament course, what's the kind of feedback that you've gotten from people out there? Because if people ask you questions or talk to you, what's kind of been the response from the people?
Most of the guys like it and they're happy to have something like that. I mean, there's a bunch of limitations to getting solutions done the right way. I mean, you have to have good pre-flop stuff. You need to have server space that you pay for on a monthly basis, like put the time into building the trees and shit. So like, I think people are happy to have like a reasonable amount of solutions that are explained, and they didn't have to do themselves. So they like that part. And then there's a bunch of concepts, whether it's from the first one or from just like watching play and explain, that not to say that I don't say stuff that's just like completely wrong. I mean, that's going to happen, right? But a lot of the stuff is like, they can pick up some little things that are worth a bunch. Like there's just a spot where it's like, all right, you never put money in here multi-way. And they're like, oh shit, I've been putting in way too much money multi-way. That's something that's really easy. It takes literally 1 second, adds a bunch of EV to their year. They
Yeah.
paid $700 for it or $1,000 or whatever. And if they're playing reasonably high stakes, just these little things, they can have a big takeaway. So that's been one of the things, is like a bunch of little tricks and stuff, like how to remember what combos to use and stuff that are easy and quickly digested, that are pretty easy to execute too. And then obviously there's stuff that's complicated that I don't even understand, that I probably tried to explain, and you know it's a work in progress. So it's the whole range. There's easy stuff that's really easy to digest. There's really complicated stuff that the best players are still working on executing, and everything in the middle. So, but I think for the most part, people like it. There's obviously always going to be, people that complain. A guy on, one of the reviews told me I had the personality of a bag of sand. You get some people really go for you, but for the most, that one hurt. But
Wow, yeah,
yeah,
that's a tough one, huh?
yeah. Or like this bluff
Jeez.
that like the internet guys are just brute. I wasn't used to that before the training course. They don't realize, like, I'm kind of sensitive. They're kind of going at me.
Yeah.
Even the bluff you posted to link this interview, everyone's like, obviously that was a bluff. I'm like, what did I do? I just want,
Yeah,
bet
it
three
seemed like pretty
times. I
normal
went
hand to
all in.
me.
Shit, man. So, this guy's telling me he's a 2-5 reg, and it's obvious I was bluffing.
I know, right?
They're always coming at you.
Well, I'm very used to them coming at me. I've been dealing with these comments for many years now, 5, 6, 7 years now. I've been getting a lot of comments, and I think that's something that you as you do more content and you're more of a public figure, you get used to dealing with those things. They're never quite easy to deal with when someone tells you that you're, a piece of shit, or you're dumb, or they want you to stop talking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It definitely isn't very fun.
No, I mean, I'm just kidding. Most of the time, it doesn't bother me. Bag of sand got me kind of. And one guy chirped me for not having any decorations in my office. Like, you're not going to get. You got nice decorations going behind you. I had a blank wall in my office for most of it, and they didn't like that either. So that's some of the feedback I got too.
They want you to
So
put up like a chart or something like that, right? Like just throw a chart
just
back there.
something back there, maybe a picture. I don't know.
Yeah. Do you plan on doing any more? So you say you do a lot of coaching, but do you plan on doing any more kind of stuff
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that in
I
the
think we're
future?
talking about doing a cash game course,
Ooh, okay.
which I've played all these super high rollers and even whatever tournaments. I mean, it's the same thing as a cash game. It's the same thing as a deep cash game for the first whole day or whatever. So I have a ton of experience with it, and we're gonna maybe do it like a live cash game course. So I've played a bunch of cash. I played a bunch of live. It would work out, but that's kind of long term. So and yeah, if I do a cash game course, obviously I'm getting some pretty good reps in right now at high stakes. So we'll see. But that's the next thing in the pipeline. No tournament course on the horizon because just like I did a couple already, and people might be sick of listening to me talk about tournaments for right now.
You think so? You think
Maybe
they
not.
had enough, huh?
But I think the tournament stuff like hasn't changed too much since I put out the last one. So we'll wait maybe until there's a lot more new info to give or a lot to add. So yeah, the next thing I think will be some kind of live based course, maybe cash game based course or both.
Yeah, I wonder what the next evolution of the tournament game could be. If it hasn't changed much in 2 3 years, I wonder what that next.
Well, it was no October 2018. I put it out.
Hmm.
The biggest changes would be adding really specific multi-way stuff with like charts on screen and stuff, from whatever Munker Solutions, and a really heavy focus on all the ICM stuff that people are playing much differently now in terms of like button versus big blind pods, stuff like that. Like no change, nothing's gonna change.
So it's
But
kind of like we could say like those are the more simpler spots that aren't changing, but then the more complicated spots people are kind of starting to understand better, which relate to ICM or relate to multi-way
yeah,
situations.
yeah, I think ICM and ICM is the number one thing that's become completely different, and then multi-way people have gotten a lot better. So it would be those two things.
Hmm. And then I guess after multi-way, what would be the next most complicated part of tournament poker that people might need to get better at or could get better at?
You play really high stakes at the end, heads up, and if you're a super high roller reg or even just like a guy that's playing 5Ks on GG or like 1Ks on GG, small fields where you're getting heads up pretty often. That's something you'd work on. That there's not a course on playing. The end of a tournament heads up, and then small blind versus big blind probably. People,
Hmm.
people don't play that too well. Um, they're really tight.
Too tight.
So, yeah, too tight. It's definitely in position. So I'd say small blind versus big blind and heads up would be the next two things after multi way and ICM.
Well, we were watching yesterday, so me and Ike did the breakdown of the final table, and that heads up match was, first of all, it's 3 hours long. It was a real grueling match. I thought that, I mean, it was back and forth, a lot of small pots, nickel and diamond, and then, I mean, the hands we showed, the highlight hands, were pretty sick hands. I mean, it was a pretty intense match. You were definitely pulling off some moves. It certainly looked like you had an advantage when it came to the heads up part of things, which makes sense because you play so many of these small field tournaments against other really great players that you have a lot of experience in the shorthand and heads up format.
Um, yeah, I think what happens heads up is like so you're at the end of a tournament you're going to get heads up against a variety of different opponents, right? Even if it's a high stakes regular, their preparation is going to range from anywhere from having done almost nothing to and they just want to like chop or they'll play but they don't really care and they know they're not losing like too much just because like edges aren't huge. Um, or you're gonna have someone that's like really good at it, that's played a bunch. um, but in any case, I think so because of that, that requires some feeling out in the beginning, which is like an old school term, obviously. But like you got to get you don't really know if you should be playing at equilibrium versus some of these guys, and it's super sensitive because some of these spots where you should be value betting super thin or barreling a certain way are based on the fact that like the out of position guys check raising top pair like almost every time or whatever. I found my opponent that there to be like not as aggressive as he should be heads up in certain ways, and then way too aggressive in other ways. So like just putting things together like that is what can help you play a lot better. But
Mm-hmm.
anytime you like every time you encounter a new guy, you don't really know off the bat how he plays heads up because he could have been the chip leader, which was kind of the case here, where he's kind of doing everything right and being aggressive and being light and stuff, even up to like three handed, and then you get heads up and he's playing it like it's button big blind, which is just like insanely looser. So that was the case here. I didn't really know what he was all about, but then it just became pretty apparent that he was just like c betting way too much, not continuing enough, overfolding everywhere, which made I actually he was overfolding to the point where I just made some bad value bets actually.
Mm.
But yeah, I mean, you just wasn't gonna find the he would find like an obvious bluff in my opinion, but wasn't gonna find the like bluffs and spots where they're tough to find.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Um,
I actually got a hand. You won't be able to see it. I can just explain the hand, but I'll put the hand on for the people at home here. And you kind of went over this during the WPT thing that you talked about, but this is a pretty crazy hand. So let me see if I can pull this up right here. Bum, bum, bum. Okay, so here's the my favorite hand of the match, right? It's a 10-7 hand, of course.
yeah,
So let me set it up for people at home. If you're watching this at home, if you're listening on iTunes, I'll just explain the hand. So Nicky P's short stack looks like he's got about 24 big blinds, and my man Artsium Pro Stack has 71 big blinds. So he's chip leader, right?
pro stack. That's great.
Very great last name. So you raise it up with the 10-7 offsuit on the button, min raise. He's going to call with Queen Jack of diamonds. Flop comes down King 5-3, all diamonds. You have 10-7,
Yeah.
no diamond. He's got Queen Jack with Jack of diamonds. You c-bet one big blind on the flop, and he's going to check call. All pretty normal up until that point. He's got a flush draw. You've got absolutely nothing. And the turn comes down, and it's it's a 7 of diamonds. And then he leads for 1.8 million chips into a pot of about 6 million. So he leads for about a third pot. And he turns, so it's 7 of diamonds, 4 diamonds on the board. He has a jack of diamonds. You have no diamonds. Now, this is where you decide to raise, and the hand gets a little fucking crazy.
That's where I take them upstairs, and then we get spicy.
Yes, this hand gets very spicy. So what are you thinking on this turn? Because he led into you before. We see a previous hand where he led into you kind of weird. You raised and folded.
That was a big thing. I mean, you'd like in this day and age, everyone's talking about playing whatever at equilibrium and shit, but like obviously there's still feels in online poker. There's still dynamic flow, whatever you want to call it. So pre-flop, this guy was semi-shove happy. He had shoved a couple times where it was like a hand, I would think he's over shoving ace X and not doing the like you're supposed to obviously call some ace X here at this depth, but didn't think he was going to call too much ace X off versus me here. If he did, I mean, whatever, he can win. Other than that, I thought the other dynamic thing was that he had just done, it was King 10,
Yeah,
same spot.
Right, yeah, he checked call flop, led
10-8.
turn.
So it's the same. It's like the same exact spot, and then he led the turn on a 4, which is like probably one of my heaviest betting volume cards because it's just a total brick, and I get to put like queen high, jack high floats in the blender there with everything. He didn't check raise the flop, so like super heavily weighted towards ace high, queen high, jack high, some backdoor type stuff that he didn't raise. So the 4 is a card where I'm going to put a shit ton of money in, which means like, cool, you have a 10, like just check call it, right? I'm going to have some stupid bluffs. And so that was kind of like a signal that, okay, like this guy is probably leading too linearly and then folding too much. So then I kind of just like took that from that hand and was like, all right, he's probably going to lead like the 8 of diamonds here and then fold too much. Jack of diamonds, I mean, honestly, if I could see that he had the jack of diamonds, not queen jack, but like just the naked jack of diamonds, I would be like, all right, I'll shove the river, and this guy's probably not going to call. But I mean, queen jack's a pretty big fold just because of the blocker stuff. Yeah, I just decided he's leading too much. He's folding too much on the river. he had the mentality, in my opinion, in terms of game flow stuff, that he wanted to keep the big chip lead and not double me up.
Interesting. Okay.
Like he's seemed that way, although he did make a weird kind of bluff first me with ace three where I made like a massive full just because I didn't think he was doing it. But he was, so I was wrong about that. So I guessed wrong against him there early in the match. But in any case, yeah, I think so. Then when he leads there, also not only just the game flow stuff, but I do have like a perfect combo that falls into the bluffing range even at equilibrium where you just use your 7x. So I use it, and then you know I just decide that he's gonna overfold the river. Simple
Yeah.
stuff.
So the river comes down. So he leads a turn. You raise. He calls. The river is an offsuit queen. So it's king 7 5 3 4 diamonds, then an offsuit queen. You still have the 7. He's got the jack high flush. He checks river. You basically go for a pot size bet all in. He takes down for a while and folds the third nuts. And I was pretty shocked to see this. I mean, it's a very pivotal hand, right? This, if he calls, he
Yeah,
wins a tournament. You guys battle for another hour or two, and he ends up losing. I mean, he's got to look at that hand at home and say, like, what the hell was I thinking folding this hand in this spot here?
he's probably butthurt about that. Yeah,
Yeah, I think so. But it
but I
makes sense.
mean,
It makes
like
kind of sense what you're going for. You thought he's just bet calling too light on the turn. You get him to fold by the river.
bet calling too wide on the turn, get him to fold by the river. Wanted to protect the chip lead. Didn't think he was going to make a huge call. Hadn't made a big call yet. No, had no reason to think he was just going to like lead the 9 of diamonds and then just like snap me off on the river. Also, just like probably hasn't played against people that have bluffs there.
Right. Yeah, he's probably not used to someone that first. I mean, that's a big, heads up WPT title, $494,000 first place. He might not think you're going to go kamikaze there and turn the 10-7 into a bluff there and risk your tournament life.
It was 4 a.m. I was in, like I was just like, all right, if this guy calls, I'm going to bed, and if he doesn't, I'm going to maybe get a chance to win here. Run it.
Well, it was a nice hand. It was a nice win. I mean, obviously, it's got to feel good kind of getting one of those big scores like that. And
Oh yeah, I mean that's unreal lucky to just like a 3K with 1,000 people. That's not necessarily something you get a chance to win, and you got to run great. I ran sick at the final table at aces versus jacks. I shoved jack 10 suited in the aces, and I turned the guy dead, which was dope. Like no sweat at all.
we did see those
jacks in the
hands. We
third
definitely
one.
saw those hands. I mean, you got to run well in these things, right? You got to win the aces
Sure,
versus
but I just
jacks.
mean like yeah, it was super. I ran great from. I had a lot of chips throughout the whole tournament, and then ran great in the final 2 tables for sure. I mean, sure you have to, or sometimes you don't, and you kind of coast with a chip lead. But when you're like one of the middle stacks throughout the final 2 tables, anytime you get to win, that's incredibly lucky because you're not supposed to, because you're one of the middle stacks. So it's pretty good, and yeah, I mean, and to win a 3K for 500, I don't think I've ever done that before.
Yeah, it seems like right now these big tournament series are a lot of value. It seems like there's a lot of EV to potentially be gained in these things with the World Series events, with the WPT events, and the Stadium Series. I wasn't paying attention too close to that, but that did seem like they were getting some big field as well and big
Yeah,
prize pool as
yeah.
well too.
Had some huge 5Ks. Like, yeah, I mean, online poker is super healthy right now, and I wouldn't necessarily say like it's the softest competition because you're facing like even random dudes you don't know that are just like online regs or whatever. Like they're playing good. Everyone's aggressive. Most people have playing pretty good pre-flop. So there's definitely money to be made, but it's not easy. And grinding out these big 3-day events and stuff, you got to give the guys that are doing it on a daily basis on these during these series, playing all these GG bracelet events and stadium series and multi-day stuff every day. Like good for them because those are long hours and it's a lot of decisions.
Mm-hmm. Ryan DePaulo, Jenner Gambler says, "I'm sure this observation has been made, but does he live in a dorm room?"
I am in my girlfriend's parents' house in her niece's playroom. This is where I won the 3K. This is where I've been playing 500, 1K, 2K with my shirt off. That's it, man.
This is where you've been drinking the beer too.
I've been staying off the beer mostly, like because if if the game runs or whatever, like I want to be able to hop in. So doing like 1 day a week. It
One day a
also
week.
beer doesn't jive too well with the mountain biking stuff. You can't really wake up at like 6 and just crush 4 hours hungover.
Have you tried to do that yet, or is this something trial and
I've
error?
done it before.
You tried to do it.
That's the only time. The only time I do that is when I have scheduled a ride with someone else that I can't bail on.
Then you
Like it's
won't.
like okay,
Okay.
we're going at 6:30 tomorrow. Like I'll pick you up, and then the guy gets there, and I'm like, oh, this is going to be awful the entire time.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
So
So
you've learned a lesson.
yeah, it doesn't go. It doesn't work. It's just too miserable.
Not to
It's
say
not the
you
type of
might. Not to
thing.
say you won't. It's a low frequency play in the future. Not to say you're not going to do that. Just that you're not
No,
planning to
it'll
do it
happen
regularly.
again, but it's not. It'll happen again, but it's not something. It's just not fun. Yeah.
People in the chat, they want to know, Nick. They want to know about the degenerate stories. Now, do you have any degen stories you can
Uh,
share?
I'm not much of a degen. Everyone that's close with me knows that I have my like one night a year just trying to break the aria on the single zero roulette table.
Oh yeah. What? So
But I won't go home without owning the casino, so I haven't really booked too many wins.
yeah, you're losing a lot of money in these things then, huh?
Well, no, it's just once per year.
Once per
I have
year. What do you? How much money do you start with?
I'll maybe gamble for like 5K, but if I run it up big, I'm trying to like win it all, you know.
So you're trying to win. You're trying to win like $7.5 billion at the roulette table that night.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And then, like if it doesn't work out, it's not that painful and if it's not like I keep reloading, you know. After that it's done. That's my one night a year. Otherwise, degenerate stories like dude, I was always so scared to like partly because from learning from John Jaffe, like he was pretty good with bankroll management and stuff, and I always thought it was like super irresponsible to take shots. So I never have zero degenerate poker stories whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've played cash maybe too high a little bit live, but like it's not a huge deal or whatever at the Bellagio. So gonna be a disappointing answer on that one. Got my one or two nights per year where I go on the Moon Rocket Express at the Aria and just try to absolutely shoot. That's
What's the
it.
highest you ran it up to in your attempt to own the casino?
Actually, one time I was with Keith Lear, I actually booked a win. I rode the Learjet
You rode
to
Learjet. You got up there.
almost 65K or so, yeah.
That's not bad.
And then I booked it. I don't know what he must have had some old savvy gambler like vibe for me. He was like, you better go home, kid." It's like, all right, I'll go home.
So maybe you're actually up lifetime. I mean, if you go once a year, you lose 5K each time, you win
Yeah,
65 one time. You're kind of. It sounds like you might be up for the lifetime of this.
there might be times where I lost like 20 instead of 5, but like yeah, no,
A few
as long as it doesn't happen.
reloads.
But
a few reloads once in a while, huh?
I don't have. But yeah, no, I mean like I have zero sports betting, like nothing. Yeah, I don't know. I don't appeal. It doesn't appeal to me. Roulette appeals to me because it can be very short and you can win a lot. And I mean, like that's like if you're drunk, you like get back from dinner and whatever. It's fun to like bet all your buddies' sports numbers and bang one off for 35x. That's what I do. I just have my buddies, all of their numbers on my hockey team, and I just bet everyone's number. And if I miss a number and it hits, I'm sick to my stomach. That's my biggest DJ. If I'm like, oh my god, I forgot Hunter was number 6. Like, six. How did I like when 6 hits? I'm like, oh, I won, and then it's empty, and I'm like, what did I do?
And
I forgot
those are the
Hunter.
moments where you're like you're take yeah. Those
That's
stick
my
with you the most.
that's my 2 DGen nights a year. This year I did it with Darren and my buddy from home
Hmm.
in December.
Do you still play any hockey? Are you active in any sports like that at all when you go back home?
Golf.
Just
Yeah,
golf.
I
Yeah.
played hockey in college, and I don't like playing for fun at all because now I'm fat and slow, and it's like golf is fine because like you can figure it out. Like I've actually gotten a lot better at golf over the last several years. Like I'm playing okay now, decent. Like I was very good at golf at one point, but hockey is like I went out. My buddy like didn't even play in high school or college, and then he invited me to like his lawyers league game a couple years ago when we lived in Boston, and I went out and like these old lawyers were just like roasting me. I was like, I played in college. Like, what is going on? And even my buddy was like, dude, what are you doing? I didn't think you were gonna be this awful. And I was like, yeah, I can't play for fun. I'm just way too out of shape. Because like, I was probably weighed 175 pounds when I played in college, and I was like strong. And now then I weighed like 220 and was not strong.
Uh-huh.
Now I lost some weight from biking. But so playing hockey for fun is not fun because if you're out of shape. I'm sure the guys that stayed in shape still have fun, but I can't. So I hung them up.
What about just getting back in shape? I mean, that sounds like an option here, right?
No, I am bad. I mean, I'm in shape. Like I'm down to like 180, 185 now. In better shape, but I haven't skated in 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Also, shinny hockey, like fun hockey, isn't that fun because real hockey, you're hitting each other. So people can't act like an asshole in terms of like, I'm going to like fake a slap shot and go around you. When you're like 35, if someone acts like they're going to hit a slap shot, you just get out of the way. You know what I mean? You're not playing. I'm like, okay, you can go around me if you want. I'm not going to stop a fucking slap shot with my ankle.
Yeah, right.
Like, so there's just all this cheesy stuff that people can do when there's no hitting and you're not trying. And then it's just kind of like 3-on-1s, 4-on-1s. The goalies are total Swiss cheese the whole time. They're brutal. We got this guy, like you got guys. Like there was a guy that was the goalie for one of these shinny games. He would bring this gigantic bottle of Welch's grape juice. Way back in the day. This was when I still played, but he would bring this gigantic bottle of Welch's grape juice and put it on top of the net, like where goalies keep their water bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And when people would go top cheese on it, it would just fall off the net like a huge bottle of grape juice. Yeah, I mean, it's brutal the stuff that happens when you're playing pickup hockey. You don't want to be there.
So no pickup hockey.
No, I'm done with it. Golf is amazing. Golf and mountain biking is completely enough.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to take that to note. No amateur hockey, but considering recreational golf. I like that.
No, I play golf all the time. That's like my biggest hobby probably. I just took like a couple months off now because we're in Europe. But I mean, I play all year.
Are you gambling a lot on golf too?
0.
No gambling on golf. Okay.
I don't gamble on anything. That's it. I mean, I don't like playing for money, and I play a lot of golf. Like when I was in Vegas, I played a lot of golf with Seth Davies. He's not a gambler either. We just play for fun.
Mm-hmm.
We just kind of into trying to get better. And when I'm home, I have a great home course. I play every day pretty much with my buddies from home, and it's good. So no gambling.
Super Learner 9 says he should go out for a night with Limitless. Would you and Limitless? We had Limitless on the podcast this week. He's the opposite of you, right? He's living a little bit out of line life. Would you and Limitless go out for a night out and have a good time?
Me and Victor Vuitton. Yeah, we could probably have a good time with that guy. He seems like he has a good sense of humor.
Very funny guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've talked to him a lot. I've hung out with Makita. You know, maybe we would go out, have a little bit of a good time. I can get, maybe one night in me.
Maybe Baby Corn makes an appearance, makes a little guest appearance.
I don't think the Russians are really into like taking their peens out in public. They don't have that American peen sense of humor. They're kind of like, what is that?
I could see my man Ryan DePaulo maybe showing Baby Corn off in a vlog or something like that. I don't know. I mean, he's kind of like he's like a crazy guy. He wins a bracelet. He might. I don't know if he heard your idea earlier about taking pictures with the bracelets and Baby Corn, but I could totally see him doing something like that.
That's how you make it official. I told, Dan DeVoris when he won the Millionaire Maker, I told him, peen shot time, like,
yeah,
or you didn't win it.
Is that like a group chat? Do we send it to the group chat if we do that too, or is that just like for the private stash? Maybe like you frame it for the bedroom or something like that.
Only the boy, like the boarding school boys, like the locker room boys, get the peen shots.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't send it to like a 26-person poker chat.
You wouldn't do that, like a Pio solver group with their own sims.
But they got half the guys they wear their bathing suit in the shower at the gym.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they're just not peen guys.
Yeah, I agree, man. This is like my buddy was telling me a story yesterday. He talked about how he went to can't remember which country it is. It seems relevant though, but he was in a European spa, like a gymnasium. He got a I think it was Austria actually, where Vienna.
Dude, that's so funny. Yeah. Okay, please tell me.
But he said that he went to the him and his two friends, right? They went to the spa there. He went to the sauna, and they wanted to wear their they wanted to wear their swim trunks, right? They didn't want to take off. So some guy walks in. There's 7
Oh
spas,
yeah.
4 empty. He walks in. He's in another spa, butt naked. Walks up to them and goes, "Hey, you guys got to
They'll
take those."
regulate you.
Yeah, he's like, "You got to take your
Yeah.
shorts off," and they're like, "We want to keep them." Like, That's not how we do things here. That's disrespectful. Like, look at the sign. The sign says no shorts. So he goes out, gets a worker, he comes back in, and he says, "Listen, you guys got to take your shorts off. You can't be in here with any clothes on." So they go, "All right." They go out, they get a towel. They come back with a towel. The guy comes back, he
No,
says,
no towel.
"No towel. Like, you got to take off you got to take your dick out right here."
Yeah.
And they're in a stalemate. They go, "Do we take it out or do we not take it out? Like, what do we do here?" And I think they left, but they didn't understand it was customary. There, it's disrespectful to the culture to be wearing shorts or a towel in the sauna.
Your voice sounds soft too. Like, take it out. I mean, just like hang out in the sauna. It's fine. But that just happened to me in St. Anton's, Ischgl, right? So we were there for a ski trip in Austria,
Mm-hmm.
and me and my buddy are just sitting there. We got we started with the towels, so like not egregious. Like we weren't in there. We knew bathing suits, no chance. Like we were in there with the towels, co-ed. Dude and his wife come in, just go full, like, right next to us. And we're like, okay, we got our towels on, whatever. And they're like pointing at us when I'm speaking. We're like, yes, that's cool, man. Like, and this is fun. And he's like, no doubt. And so, yeah, same exact thing. He's like, open the towel up. Like, he's trying to show me. And the wife's like tugging at my towel. And I'm like, yes, I very much so. Yes, thank you. Like, and yeah, they don't like it. You gotta hang peen there, and you need to it's about the sweat on the wood. That's what it is. It's about bacteria from bathing suits and everything else getting on the wood. It's not like they need it's not like show me that you're a man type stuff.
Is that a big
But
problem in American saunas where all the bathing suit residue is causing diseases for people in Europe?
I don't
Kind of
know,
knew
but
this,
that's
or
what they say. I don't know. That's what they say, but I mean, whatever. I've never heard that in America. I got no problem. My only problem is that I'm kind of I'm not necessarily a shower, but a grower, so it's a bit tough in the tough in the sauna.
You don't want people to make some inappropriate or wrong, incorrect judgment about what they're maybe seeing in this.
Yeah,
I mean, I understand that completely. Yeah, it makes sense,
yeah,
right?
that's Austrian ski culture right there.
You plan to spend a lot more time there skiing, or what? Is this something that you liked, or what?
I picked up my best friend had his bachelor party there in February, and I had never skied and I sucked. But there's really good skiing next to my house, so I took lessons and went for like 4 times a week for like 2 months and got reasonable enough to ski with those guys. But people with skiing and mountain biking are total idiots when it's a group of experts or like people that have done it for a really long time, and they're like, hey man, like we're gonna do this, and I'm like, do you think I can do it? And they're like, oh yeah, for sure. And then you get up there and you're skiing on the fucking spine in like deep powder, and if you fall, you just fall into a bunch of trees and you're like lost. You know what I mean? Like at breakfast, they're not really thinking about the fact that you've only been skiing for 2 months.
Right, and
You can't really. I mean, so part of that trip was a little scary for me because I had a bunch of guys being like, dude, you'll be fine, and then they're just gone. And you're like, all right, I'm at the top of a mountain by myself, and I'm just like kind of suck at skiing.
yeah,
But
yeah.
it was fine. I love it. It's not as fun as mountain biking, and it's a whole process, and sometimes it's super cold, which is brutal, but it's good.
Isn't it in the chat says, kind of unrelated to the discussion there, but he says, ask him about his worst downswing and how he handles it. Yeah, it's a good question, right? About the worst downswing. It sounds like been playing for a long time. I'm sure you've had some pretty big swings.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because like worst downswing, I mean like gross is really different than worst downswing for your personal self or even just like breaking even for like a year and spending a bunch of money or buying something where you didn't intend to break even, but you had a big downswing at the end of the year and like investments go down at the same time. You know what I mean? Like a bunch of shit can happen where I would say just like your net worth changes a lot,
Mm-hmm.
which was definitely like from August 2018 until when did I win the 3K? Tuesday?
Tuesday.
August 2000. I'd say August 2018 to Tuesday.
Okay.
No, I mean, honestly, yeah, I probably did lose. Like, I probably lost two or 2.5 million over that period. But
Wow.
it's not something that notice. Like, I mean, like net, like so there was upswings and downswings or whatever, but it was slow. So like you don't really. So it's hard to say what your biggest downswing is in a small period of time. Maybe 800K or so in a small period of time because I
Mm-hmm.
got crushed in Barcelona and then I started playing some GG games and just got murdered. Like you can get so crushed in these GG tournaments. It's just wild. You can lose a bunch and be pretty good or because it's just like you're playing four bullets and then the last one you got seven blinds and you're registering under the gun by accident or whatever, just torching it. Like the variance is insane there. So I would say overall probably around 2.5 million, and at a short period probably like 800K. How you deal with it? I mean, there's certain times where I dealt with it by I usually deal with it by playing a lot, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're not playing a lot, it's always lingering, in my opinion. The idea that you lost and you're not doing anything about it. But you have to understand that like I always have the big picture of like, well, I wasn't supposed to have gone on a 3 million, like, smooth it out in terms of EV, right? Like, not every peak that you hit are you entitled to, if
Mm-hmm.
that makes sense. Like, you're not supposed to be able to have a $4 million year when your EV is 750. Like, something's going to smooth that out. So, plan for it, know it's coming, kind of thing. No one's just going to go straight up. But obviously, when it happens, when the reality hits, like the dream is to go straight up. So when the reality hits, you got to deal with it somehow. I always deal with it by playing a lot. And yeah, kind of, I always have. Even when I was like earlier, when I was backed and I was super stuck in makeup or whatever, I would just like play constantly.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a great answer for everybody. It works for me.
I
But I
guess so. I
don't
guess the
like
idea that you play a lot is that the more you play, the quicker that you'll get out of it.
not about money at that point. It's just about like going on a massive downswing and then just like chilling for a while. There's anxiety there for me
Yeah.
because like it's at some point I got to get back on the horse. So like let's just do it sooner rather than later.
So when you get
Unless I
back on the
feel.
horse, is there a way maybe that you try to lower your variance or be more game selective
Oh
or
yeah,
maybe?
I mean like I was saying earlier, like when you lose, you got to take some. Obviously, I'm taking smaller pieces, looking for backing in certain situations. Like like everything, anything that's gonna increase your EV and work with the amount of liquidity that you have, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like buying a house or whatever, going on a downswing in the same year, a huge downswing, or having investments go down at the same time, obviously, then you just have to explore other options. You don't just keep going business as usual. Like you scale it down. You have no ego about it. You swap a shit ton more, smooth it out. Like try to achieve what your yearly expectation is with as little variance as you can. If you need to be banking cash.
Mm-hmm. I guess
So
the question is, right? If you're someone out there listening at home and you hear that yourself, right? Someone who is one of the top players, put in thousands of hours, right? Tens of thousands of hours.
yeah,
If
yeah,
someone
yeah.
like you is capable of going on this kind of massive downswing, what maybe hope is there for someone else out there who isn't as good and hasn't put in that amount of work, right?
Well, you go and I mean, when we're talking about that, the amount of money is big, but the amount of dollars isn't big. And I was playing. A lot of it came from playing, you know, really high stakes, kind of quick structured stuff where I just bricked.
Yeah.
25K, 50K turbos, a bunch of stuff like that. It came from swapping huge in certain stops and just having 8 people brick, which is like super rare. Like I think 400, 3 or 400K of my that like short term downswing I had that I thought was the biggest one was just me being pretty responsible with my own piece and swapping with like 8, 10 guys in Barcelona and just having all of us do nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do a whole trip like that, you could have been super conservative in terms of your own piece and just kind of spread it out. And then you get that outlier event where no one does anything, and then you actually lost a huge amount of money that affects your roll, And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't necessarily a mistake. It just means you need to scale back at a certain point. You might be able to go for it again the next stop or whatever. But like I said earlier in the thing, like when we were talking about people going broke, it's just like you got to know when to scale back. You got to know when to look for backing. If there's deals available for huge stakes events that just like increase your EV, you got to look for that. You got to try to sell at markup, swap with great guys. You got to do everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's no there's no reason, to get prideful about it and be like, oh, I'm on a downswing. I'm going to have X amount. I'm not going to reduce my piece, or I don't want to play super high stakes for a low piece. Like there's been many times where I've played really huge buy-ins with a small piece of myself, swapped a bunch, taken some markup, move on.
What about dropping down stakes in general and maybe taking bigger pieces of
Well, if
yourself
you have the
versus?
ability to sell and get markup, it's always worth more than dropping down in stakes. Like
Okay.
if you can play 100K with none of yourself and or 5% of yourself and sell at 1.1, you're making 9 grand in that tournament or whatever.
Right.
So
Yeah, I think it's a question a lot of people have as well. If they're going to not play for much of themselves at a higher stake, why not just play lower stakes and play for all yourself potentially like that?
that's the answer. Or if you still, obviously you're not going, in this example, you just want to reduce your own piece, you can still afford to invest a decent amount in the tournament. You just don't want the variance all in yourself. So, have 10% of yourself, 5% of 8 other guys, still have that 50K investment, but it's way more spread out. You're going to get 20% back, 30% back. You're going to, if you perceive the best player's ROI in a tournament to be 10% or whatever, you're going to get that 10% on your 50K, and then you're going to sell the rest at markup. And now you got kind of like a little bit of both sides. I mean, you just got to be always willing. At least for me, I've always just been always adjusting things as with my swings. I've
Mm-hmm.
never been rich enough to have the consistent, like massive piece of every time. If I have a big downswing, I got to scale it back a bit.
So I guess looking forward, what do you have any goals for yourself with poker? Is it to potentially just keep playing, keep getting better, try to have winning
Yeah.
years, or how do you sort of structure that or think about that?
I think like my consistent goal is that I just want to always be a top player in the big games. Um, and to do that just having that goal itself means you have to work all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I never make like a monetary goal. Like I want to make X amount next year, or play X amount of hours, or even study X amount of hours. I just always want to make sure that I feel like, and that like the other good players perceive me to be one of like a good winning player in the best, highest games. I can't control other people's opinion or whatever, but that's my goal. And with that comes kind of like the goal of putting in a lot of work,
Mm-hmm.
I think.
So why is
So I
that
don't
important?
make,
Why is that part important to you to have other people's perception be that you're one of
no,
the?
no, not that. Well, I think because that's the only, you can't judge who's the best by their results in tournaments. The only real judge is like the guys that know what's going on, watch you play, and see you do the right stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessarily that, like, I mean, of course you care what your peers think about you. I just mean, like, I think that's the fairest assessment of players. Like you can take the cash game that's running, for example, right? The guy right now that could be stuck the most, I have no idea where anyone's is, but like where anyone is in terms of this, but like it's obviously possible. The guy that's stuck the most is the best player, and when you play with him, it could be obvious that he's playing the best.
Right, but
Like
that doesn't mean that it's
he,
guaranteed to win.
he just nails the size every time. His frequencies look good. Like he's putting you in tough spots. He's obviously got the exploits right. So I mean, if you just get that feeling about somebody, then you can tell that they're great. So yeah, I don't make that's my goal is just kind of just I want to compete at the in the best game in the biggest games, and I hope that they're around for as many years as they're around. That's gonna stay my goal until I don't feel that way anymore.
Do you foresee a future where these games don't necessarily exist to play in?
I think live poker and big blinds is really healthy, so it's are really healthy. So I don't worry about them going away at all. I mean, like it's really sad. Sad. This is a stupid way to complain because there's way worse stuff going on. But this year was slated to be like a ridiculous year for tournaments, live
Mm-hmm.
tournaments. Like we had so many 100Ks, massive guarantee 25Ks with like seats given away. Obviously, you know about Barcelona, 5Ks and 10Ks everywhere, bunch of big Triton stops, short deck was taken off. So for everything to get paused when it was about to have the biggest year ever, you know, I think that kind of sucks, but I think it'll pick right back up where it left off. I mean, we've had $2 million buy-in tournaments in the last 2 years that had great turnouts. So yeah, there's I think there's a lot of appetite for big short deck and no limit live tournaments, and Triton is doing an amazing job. I don't think they're going anywhere. Party Live is doing amazing. They're not going
Mm-hmm.
anywhere. EPT is shrinking a bit, but still, when they have a stop, it's always great, and they're in really good locations. So like, there's no reason to believe it's not going to keep going because people love it. And then if it does, there's small stuff in the state, like smaller stuff, isn't going anywhere. So like
There'll always be a lot of options.
WPT mains and stuff like that. I mean,
Right.
everything just seems super healthy. I mean, people love it. People love the game.
So it seems like to me, right? I mean, it seems you kind of I pay attention. I talk to a lot of people, and not everyone is optimistic about some of these things, depending on where they work at or what their exposure to the environment is, or the people that they're around. And so I get a lot of viewpoints. My viewpoint is generally positive about the online ecosystem, the live ecosystem, the future of poker, content, marketing, and everything in terms of that'll help get the game out there. The ambassadors are starting to grow. We're starting to see more ambassadors, more content. Content helps bring in new players. It helps retain current players, active players. So it's like I see a lot of real positive things happening out there. So I am optimistic too. And with the live poker coming back here, I'm optimistic as well about that. It seems like we're getting some tournament series that are coming back now. I think Razvedov was going to put something on. I don't know if they're going to do any more. I think Venetian's going to start putting stuff on. So I imagine next year this time we're gonna see we're gonna see a lot different live poker world.
Yeah, and I mean, live cash is always going to be around. Things keep popping up. I mean, there's more poker than I can play right now, and I don't. I hope that doesn't change, and I think that's the case for a lot of people. There's apps, there's everything, right? So I mean, I think we're good.
Yeah, a lot of options.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, the amount of money that you can play for is definitely higher than it's ever been
Well,
ever.
I guess for you, $2.2 million downswing, you're playing 100Ks. And I guess it really isn't that much. I mean, it's a lot, but it is relatively to what the buy-ins are. It's not a ton of buy-ins here.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, it's also investing in other players and stuff. Like swapping is just investing in other guys instead of selling, and just if that doesn't go well, you're gonna lose a bunch, you know.
Yeah.
Uh, I also like bricked for that. Like I didn't have any results for that time period really. Like I had a really big 2018. Like I said, I ran way above EV, and then I ran way below EV.
Mm-hmm.
Probably smoothed out to something like exactly where I should be, you know.
Yeah, makes
So
sense.
yeah. Um, but like I said, it's also over 2 years, so it wasn't like I got mashed like in one day. Like I don't know what these guys, some guys that play huge, like they get crushed for that in like a day or so. That's insane. I don't know how you deal with that. How you deal with it? Like you can. It's not like you just get hit by a freight train. Like you see it coming. Like I'm losing every day. It's not like one day I just started like I lost it all. I'm like, shit, this series isn't going well. Okay, this month isn't going well. Damn. Okay, all right.
Mm-hmm.
So like you have time to plan for it. You're fine, and it's slow, and yeah. So
What kind of investments are you currently into right now?
I'm super passive. I just have my requisite amount of Bitcoin that everyone told me I should have that I know nothing about,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't touch it. And I have index funds,
Mm-hmm.
Vanguard, simple stuff.
Very
Just
simple
don't.
stuff, right?
I mean like SEP IRA every year type shit, S&P, couple couple other index funds, healthcare stuff, emerging markets,
So you kind of spread out your investments amongst a few different things.
just a few index funds, but I'm never like, oh, I'm gonna sell. Like for example, throughout this entire time since March, just didn't touch it. Just was like, all right, it'll smooth out, and I'm not going to be the guy to be stock picking right now or timing it. So
Yeah.
just gonna let it sit there, and so that's
They're,
kind of
they're
how I
still they're
approach
still
it.
very optimistic about Bitcoin right now. They're very optimistic about Bitcoin, especially when the Federal Reserve is printing more money, driving up inflation, assets prices are rising. That seems to be the general trend from the Bitcoin people, the financial people, is that investing your money in assets not in the United States dollar right now seems to be the play a lot of people are recommending.
Yeah, I mean, I also have. I have a good amount of equity in my house too, which is also in Canada. So
Right,
I,
real estate, yeah.
I have that. Forgot to mention that. It's probably that was one of the bigger things I did in the last 2 years. But yeah, man, I'm not an expert in that stuff, and I'm not going to try to time it, or I'm not going to try to read it. Really,
Mm-hmm.
poker is enough variance for me
I
without
know,
doing
right?
that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
Yazid says, does he think that live tournaments will be harder given that more people have been playing online? That's pretty interesting, right? Yeah.
yeah, that's a great question. Yes, because playing with good players or people that are doing stuff right, it's really hard not to pick up on even just little things that make you immediately better. Pre-flop sizing, noticing things that like you'll play. You play these big World Poker Tour things online, or you play these GG things, even at the lower stakes. You're eventually going to run into, especially with real names now, you're eventually going to run into someone that you know is great, and you're going to see them do something, and you're going to be like, well, I know that guy's probably doing it right, and I never use that size.
Right.
Or he's min raising, and I've been 2.5xing out that size. I must be messing that up. He didn't shove here, he called. So, like, you're going to come across somebody elite once in a while, somebody good, medium, somebody that's better than you, and they're going to do something, and you're going to see it, and it's immediately going to make you better, right? So it's really hard not to get better
I feel like that's
unless
always
you're
been the case,
really
though, right?
not
Like,
playing
aren't
well.
haven't people been doing that for a long time? So I used to get better all the time. Anytime I battle against another, even now when I play against other players who I know are good, I'm just looking at what they're doing, trying to figure out what they're doing, and then trying
Yeah,
to work it into my own game.
it's an amazing learning tool, and you always want to see what other people are doing, and check it later on and see like was that wrong, or did I just have am I way off here because that guy's doing it different than me. I mean, one of the biggest learning experiences in my life is just like I was lucky enough to be able to sell to play high stakes early, and then I started to get to play against people like Ike and Chukun and all these guys, Stevie, and you just look at what they're doing in these high rollers, and you're like, okay, like if they're doing it, I got to look into this because that's not a size I use. That's not a thing I do with this hand or whatever. So just playing with the best guys, you're just going to get way better. That's why I think I got a lot of guys even that are playing for like non pros or whatever that play super high rollers regularly. They're going to get eventually just like really really good.
Right. It might cost them a lot of money to get there, but eventually they're going to get there.
But yeah, expensive lessons. But I mean, they're going to get really good.
Right. Siraj says, Joey, can you please ask Nick to explain more about how people are playing ICM spots differently now?
I think in the last year or so, especially with GG games where they're small and you make a lot of final tables, you're playing a lot of bubbles. Compared to like slow structured, huge field tournaments, that was kind of like the prevalent setup in online poker, and still is at lower stakes. Now you have a lot of like 1K to 10K type tournaments where you're in a lot of bubble spots, you're in a lot of final table spots. So people did a little bit more work on it. And it's kind of just the idea that your stack plays essentially like in theory deeper than it is. So you do a lot more like open raising and folding off stacks where you would normally shove, like min raise folding off 10, 11 blinds or whatever. 3-bet folding short, 3-bet folding short for a small size, using totally different hand classes because it's more based on blocker value than being linear for value. Post flop stuff where there's a lot of leading based on stack distributions and stuff like that. Stuff that people just didn't know about before the computers could do the work for us, and stuff that people didn't really look into. I mean, I think POICM came out in the spring of 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a long time ago now, but not everyone started using it right away. So just post flop passivity, letting stack distribution dictate your play a lot more. I mean, some of it's intuitive and people probably are good at it, but more people are good at it now and more people are really precise with it. So all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
it's one thing I've been taking away from when I studied tournaments is like what I thought people did was with like 10 big blinds, the automatically idea was just shove all in. So I was thinking, well, why is that the only option? Like, why are you just automatically just because you win chips and everyone does? To me, I felt like there should be other ways to play these shorter stack sizes and there should be different strategies.
Yeah.
The idea of they say like you can never 3-bet fold or something like that. Well, can you never 3-bet fold? Right? I mean, why can't you? Is there potentially a world where you can do these things? Like that's sort of the questions I have when I start studying this. These sort of like you have to do this. I never necessarily see it that way. Well, maybe there's a reason for you'd be able to do that as an exploit potentially, or it's just a different way to think about the game.
Yeah, I think people generally understood the tightness and like, sort of laddering type stuff and not risking your tournament life in marginal spots when you can get pay jumps and kind of like folding is plus EV. Like I think that was well understood, but taking that to the next level with all these like pretty tough to execute plays like short stack 3-bets and post flop leading and kind of being, where you're supposed to be passive, where you're not, all that stuff is just like gotten way more specific and well trained at this point. So I think that's where people are kind of some people that are putting in work there are gaining a little bit of an advantage.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, you think about where are the spots that people don't necessarily know how to play very well, and kind of the deep stack spots. I think people are starting to understand those pretty well. The best players, at least talking like from the best player strategy, and then you kind of go down there and you just make a board of every single spot that you might have, and then of course there's going to be some you're uncomfortable with, and as you play for longer periods of time and as training becomes better, you're going to naturally get better at those until the point where maybe you don't have many spots where you're necessarily that uncomfortable with or that you can improve. And I guess that's the part I'm wondering, is that point ever reached, or does the game always constantly evolve where we never actually get to that point where we hit a ceiling in terms of understanding on these situations?
Yeah, I think like I don't think there's like a ceiling. I think it'll continue to grow, and it's with the solvers and people just getting better understanding how to use them. I think you're just gonna see these like probably a year ago. I wasn't doing anything at the final. I wasn't doing like half the stuff that I know about at final tables now.
Mm-hmm.
So like ceiling stuff, I think you're just gonna keep seeing new stuff. People are gonna adjust. Yes. So I think from that perspective, like it's hard to say. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't put a limit on it. And when you get better, it's also just like what I said before. It's hard to execute this stuff. So getting better at executing it means you're going higher and higher up. You know what I mean? Like so. There's I would say definitely no ceiling in terms of that stuff. And then people can get creative with understanding who's doing it and who's not.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Gauntlet 4 says, ask Nikki P who's better at poker, American or Euros?
I think, not just because I'm American, but I think it's pretty obvious that, I would say North Americans are the best.
North Americans.
There's some really great Canadian players.
Interesting. Why do you say that? Why do you say North Americans are the best?
Well, you got Tim Adams, Sam Greenwood, Dan Devoris, Ike, Jason, Stevie's in the middle. He's not I don't count him as European because he's, not really there. Hangs out with all North Americans. And in terms of tournament guys, but yeah, you have great European players. I mean, obviously you've got Makita, Linus, all these guys playing the cash game. Adamo's great. You got Ali's North American, Jake. I mean, all the guys are great. There's just more Americans playing right now, so I guess they're equal skill level, but there's a bigger team of the guys that are playing really good in North America, if that makes sense. So I guess I would say the best guys are the same. There's just more of the best guys that are from North America.
Right. I can go with that. I like that. I think most people would say it's Europeans on average, but at the highest stakes, it might be the North Americans that are still playing.
Okay. Yeah, but the best is the best, right? You're not talking about the best at the the best guys are the best guys.
Right. Exactly. I agree. Ricky says, "Can you ask Nicky P if he wants to go for the bike ride with me?" He said he's in Bratislava and he wants to do a bike ride with you.
We'll have to think about that one. How good is he?
Yeah, how good of a bike rider are you, Ricky?
How long of a ride does he want to do?
Yeah, what are you thinking? You thinking 20, 24 miles? You thinking a day? What are you trying to think for a bike ride here, right?
Yeah.
Jay says Nick's hair has grown 2 inches since the start of this podcast. It does look like it's gotten longer. It really does. Maybe it's the angle. I don't know. It does look like it's gotten a little.
I might put it away for a little bit, Jay.
Oh, damn, hiding that. Okay, Okay.
Yeah, put it back there.
It's a smooth way to put a hat on right there, brother. I mean, that's like a real fucking smooth way, right? That was like a nice little. I like that a lot. What do you think about this Doug Polk Negreanu heads up match coming up? You.
Dude, I don't know anything about it.
You've been
What is it?
Okay, so these two are going to play a heads-up match. So we don't know the stakes. It's going to be online some capacity. It'll be like 100, 200, 200, 400. They're going to play a set amount of hands, and they're going to battle each other heads up.
Didn't they say they're not going to do it, though?
They are going to play. They're going to play.
I don't see much, but I thought I saw that they said they're not going to. But if they do, I mean, I don't want to start making enemies here, but like obviously Doug played heads up for his whole career, and Daniel's never played heads up. He's not just gonna like outguess him or something. He's just gonna get wrecked.
Yeah, that's what the common people out there seem to think. The common narrative is that Daniel's.
I don't mean anything negative by it. Like I would get wrecked. I haven't studied that format. Like Doug hasn't played poker in 2 years, and he would still crush me because I haven't studied the format.
Mm-hmm.
Or just, I'm not saying, whatever. I don't want to make it about me versus Doug. I'm just saying, I'm not saying anything bad about Daniel. I'm saying somebody that's played that for a living and somebody that hasn't, the guy that played it for a living is going to win.
Yeah.
Right?
So it sounds like Daniel's a massive under. If he upsets him, man, I don't know. That'd be one of the great upsets.
I'm not going to go play Nick Schulman in pool.
That seems dumb. I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, just like, I don't know how. He's really good at it.
Yeah.
Doug's really good at heads up poker, right? So
simple way to look at it. We're going to add a little more dramatic to it. We're going to say maybe Daniel's got a shot. Listen, right coaching. He's got Helmuth in his corner. Maybe he brings Doug a style Doug just hasn't studied, right? Maybe he brings an approach. He brings a strategy to the table that Doug's not used to.
Right now?
What do you say?
Is that what I'm supposed to do for the people? Is kind of create some scenario where it's like interesting?
No, that's what I do.
I mean, heads up. Yeah, like the edges. I guess in like. I only know about edges and heads up sit and goes or whatever, but like they're not huge. So like, yeah, sure. If you're playing heads up and you're not super, super deep, like the guys get a chance. But like if they're playing deep and they play a lot, and yeah, I mean, I don't know.
I don't listen, man. Daniel been around a long time. He's got good resources, good coaches. He's fired up. He's motivated. I don't know, man.
He's fired up. He seems fired up.
Takes a couple extra Adderall for his study sessions. I don't know. I'm just saying. I think he could surprise people out there.
He's got some. I would honestly say in live poker, it's possible I think he's gotten the better of me. Like he won a huge pot against me in the 300K on the bubble. That was probably one of the biggest pots I ever played in my life in terms of like how much the pot was worth. He won that one. He seems to always have guessed right versus me. Like usually when, like obviously you're gonna get bluffs through people sometimes when you play against him all the time. But for the most part, like he folds when I'm value betting. He called when I'm bluffing. So like, I really do think that he does a very good job of understanding his opponents and guessing. I just think that heads up no limit is super technical.
Yeah. He said that if they played live, he would destroy Doug because of the live tells, and Doug is off a lot of live tells, and Daniel is an expert in picking up tells from people in person.
I am a strong believer that live tells exist, but the people that aren't good at theoretically based poker make them seem like they exist 40 times more than they do.
Really interesting.
There's no one that preaches that they're a live tell specialist that's also a theory specialist. Can you think of one?
I don't think so. No, I mean I don't know who preaches they're a live tell specialist besides like the old
Can't.
school
I
live
don't want to.
players.
I don't want to like make people feel bad or something. I'm just saying like there's no one that says like, oh, I'm a theory specialist and I also have like these insane sick live reads that I make all these hero calls with.
Right.
Yeah, it's usually kind of like it's a crutch thing. Like if you're a live tell specialist, you can make a bunch of dumb calls and be like, ah, shit. Like I
Wrong
had the
tell.
wrist read. I thought his wrist was twitching, but I forgot that when it's supposed to be his right wrist, not his left wrist. And,
I think there's something more to it. I would just imagine these guys that have played live for so long and they've just learned the game that way, thought about the game that
I'm
way. They've got to be picking up on something that people are giving off that they don't even know about.
no 100%. There's like you get a vibe. You pay attention. Like when people are in huge pots making big decisions, they do weird shit, and like you understand it. All I'm saying is like the people that are really good at it, it's still not like it's you're still wrong a good amount of time, and it's like an imperfect science in my opinion.
Right.
Otherwise, like they'd be fucking winning everything. Like it's still it's really hard to execute being a live tell specialist, and it's pretty. It's kind of easy sometimes to just like make a hero call and then be like, oh, yeah, I knew he didn't have it because of this or that, and then when you're wrong, you just don't say anything. I don't know.
It's true.
I don't think it's as much of a thing as people make it out to be. It's definitely part of the game. You really need to make sure that you don't give them off yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Getting into the fake live tell game and giving this or that off is a totally different thing. Leveling game, I mean, that exists too. Paying attention and getting a good feel for people and knowing what they do is really, really important. And I'm not saying it's not real. All I'm saying is I just don't believe that it's as big of a part of the decision making process for the guys that preach that it is, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah. Andy Gather says, if you've improved this much, what does that say about the value of buying your tutorial videos from the past at premium prices?
I mean, if you did a bunch of Monker sims yourself and have all the preflop solutions and stuff, you don't have to buy it. But otherwise, it's still worth buying.
Right. There's still plenty of value you get out of learning these things and learning these decisions and learning these
I
spots.
mean, so like I've improved a lot over the last 2 years, but like I said, single raise pots haven't changed at all. From I mean, you're nothing there. The nuts and bolts. I explain why the solver does what it does reasonably well to the best that I can, and you get all the preflop ranges that take forever and an infinite computer space to work out. So like
Mm-hmm.
all the it's only a small percentage of stuff that I've improved on, and it's stuff that I needed to improve on to beat really low ROI games.
Right.
So like to keep up with low ROI games, you got to get really specific in certain areas, but to get better at playing you know stuff that's not against the best players or whatever, it's all there still.
Makes sense. Yeah. Matt Affleck says, "What's Nikki P's handicap in golf? Is that a secret? Do we guard those things with our lives or
No,
what?"
I was a scratch. I played in college, and now I'm probably a legitimate 8 or 7. Like when I play good, now I shoot like 77.
Mm-hmm. So is
Um,
8 or 7 any good for people out there who don't know much about the golf
yeah, it's good.
handicaps?
I mean, breaking 80 is tough. Like I play by the rules because I played competitive golf, so there's no like a lot of guys have some loose versions of the rules. But I was really good at a certain point, and then I got really fucking bad. I kind of lost it. Got the yips. Quit for 5 years. Got down. I probably got down to as good as a 5 recently, and then maybe back up to a 10. I have the potential to play really bad because you don't know golf, but for Matt, if he's watching, I have the potential to play really bad because I have a little bit of an over the top move that's like timing based, just because like I'm not flexible, I'm not in good shape anymore. So I hit my driver all over the place. So I
Mm.
can still shoot like 95, but I play really well sometimes because like under 175 yards, I still play like more like a 4 or 3 or something.
But for the driver specifically, because you're out of shape and
Longer clubs, my golf swing is just not that good right now. So like I can't get away with having like a hand like timing and hands. Like basically, it's how well I play is determined on like my timing and rhythm
hmm
and stuff, not the fundamentals of my swing because it kind of sucks.
so for you to get back
Right.
there, you'd have to get in better shape. You'd have to get more flexible and work on your body.
Yeah, because I basically have zero lower body action right now because I'm
Right.
just not in shape, and that's a huge issue if you want to put the club on a good path.
Makes sense. Yeah. So if you kind of know what you got to do in order to get back there, it's just a decision
Yeah.
matter of if you want to do it or not.
Well, also in golf, like little minor changes take forever, and like you feel like you're changing something, and you look at it on the video, and you change nothing at all.
Right. Okay.
Like it has to feel so dramatic to make a really tiny change. So for the last like 2 years, I've been working on getting my club not coming over the top, getting it coming more from the inside. Taking forever. I've probably moved my path like fucking half an inch or something.
Right. Not
Like,
much. Not much
yeah.
change. Savas Giorgalis says, "What's up, Papi?" Ask Nick who he thinks is the best level at this point, both on tourneys and cash. Much love from Cyprus. Thank you. Thank you, Savas Giorgalos, for the question.
I don't think it's one guy. The problem is that different guys focus on different things at different times. Um, in terms of like overall player, I mean, Ike can play all the games really fucking good. Jason too. Stevie, Divorce, Tim Adams.
Kind of the guys you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, those
Yeah.
guys.
Is
Same
there
range.
under the radar guys or someone maybe people don't think about it as being one of those top guys right now?
Adamo, I mean, I guess like he's probably not that under the radar anymore because he's playing massive all the time. He
Right.
only plays no limit, but yeah, he's great. He's a great player.
He's from Australia, Michael Adamo.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So those guys, I mean, but I think it says a lot to be able to play. I mean, Seth Davies too, um, but it says a lot to be able to play short deck, no limit, Bobby's room game, PLO, play it all at the highest stakes,
Mm-hmm.
and be perceived to be a huge winner and the toughest guy in the game, and that's what Ike does. So I think that's pretty impressive because I can only focus on. I mean, like I thought I was going to learn short deck, and there's just so much to learn in no limit. I can only focus on that. Not good. I'm really not good at learning new games.
So you look at the players who can learn the new games and who can be proficient at those, be a high level at
I
those.
mean,
You think of those
Stevie,
guys
like
as the best players.
yeah, Stevie, I think guy like that, like he can learn a new game in a few days and just go crush people at it. I don't know. I can't do that. So yeah, those guys that it shows that they just have a really good logical like strategy mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think I kind of have it. I'm kind of like, I understand this game pretty well. I'm not really one to like sit down and strategize at like Settlers of Catan and how to crush my girlfriend or whatever. But like Stevie just loves to do shit like that. Like he'll just pick. I think he picked up like backgammon and he just like won a tournament a couple months later. So some of these guys are freaks with the strategy stuff.
Yeah, makes sense.
So
You got to play
I
games with
think
your girlfriend where she can win. You don't want to always crush your girlfriend at the game, especially if she's a competitive girl. Otherwise, her morale will get down, and you want to keep her self confidence high sometimes. So you got to play some games where there's more variance involved.
she's very competitive and she loves to play board games. And I hate board games. I hate learning the rules to anything. I just like, and she's always like, and we're always home alone at the house in Canmore and stuff. And she's always like, oh, let's play board games tonight. It's just like,
What are
I'm
the
like,
what
we
are the
can play
go-to
one
what are the
game.
board games she likes? What one does she like?
Everything, dude. I mean, you can't make it up. We don't have space for them anymore in our house. Like our guest room it must literally have 40 board games in it, and we already have 40 down in the basement where they're supposed to be. She just rips them on Amazon like all day. Like every day I wake up, there's like somebody at the door, and I'm like, what is this package? And it's like 3 board games.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's nuts. We haven't touched some of them. It's fucking crazy.
Me and my girlfriend were talking about maybe recording one of some of our board game battles we have because we get pretty feisty when we play some of these games with each other. She doesn't like
The
losing,
one,
so
the one thing. Oh, she hates losing. She got in a big fight with Divorce at our house last year over Ticket to Ride.
mm-hmm.
I don't know if you played Ticket. Have you
Never played
played
that
Ticket?
before.
Ticket to Ride is a really good, like, it's an easy game. It's fun. I'm not gonna explain the rules here, but like look it up or get it. It's a fun group game. It's a fun game heads up. But yeah, they got pretty heated, man. I mean, they were fighting about
They
the
got fired
rules.
up,
Like
huh?
they were fighting the table. I mean, they were like a couple steps away from just flipping the table over. It was bad. Yeah. So, but I hate board
You're
games.
out on board games though, right?
Yeah, way so far out. I would just rather like spend my time doing anything else.
Besides board games.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting. I've never heard anybody say this before. They just don't like board games. Well, you got the wrong girlfriend who's got 80 board games in the house. Maybe she's just buying too many damn board games, and you got to get her out of board game. I don't know. What are you going to do about this? This doesn't sound like a
Not
problem that's
possible.
going away, Nick. It sounds like the board
Uh,
games are going to be a part of your life. You can either love them and accept them, or keep hating them, right?
I accept them. I grind them out. Sometimes I just drink brew and click buttons, and she kind of gets pissed. And then sometimes I'm like, all right, it's a go. I'm gonna go today. Like I'm gonna play sober, and I'm gonna beat you.
But maybe you use this you mix it, you drink and play.
Yeah, but usually sometimes I'm like, all right, if I play Settlers of Catan with you tonight, I'm gonna drink 15 beers. And she's like, all right, well, we can play.
Does she know you can play on the app? So there's a Catan app. You can play against other people on the app.
She's a live player. She likes
My
to play
player,
live.
not a big online guy.
She grinded. There was an app for Ticket to Ride where she was playing against bots to
Uh-huh.
get good, just to get good, so that she could beat me. She under- so it's this game where there's all these. You basically make train routes and you try to connect them and you get points like that. But there's like little routes and big routes, and like there's a bunch of different strategies and they're all same EV pretty much because that's what board games are about. But she learned these like little things from the bots that were hilarious because like some bots would do these things that was maybe like the poker equivalent of like block betting, where instead of doing like big routes, they just took all the little runs and just like fucked everybody up. And then she just came out one day, hit me with all these block bets, and I was like, "What the fuck? What's going on here, dude?" She was grinding the app, dude, when I was playing, and then she just came out. She didn't even tell me about it. I caught her.
I make it. I purposely don't study the games that I play against my girlfriend. Otherwise, because I don't. I just let's just play it, right? Like I don't want to get very good at the game, and then it doesn't become a fun game anymore to play.
Yeah, exactly. Like, dude, I don't mean to keep bringing him up, but I mean, fucking Divorce. The kid's sitting there. He's like, you need time bank chips to play a board game with Daniel Divorce, 1,000%.
He's
You can't play with
making
him
sure he's
without.
doing everything GTO.
He's sitting there tanking. The girls are ready to leave. Like it's his girlfriend, my girlfriend. They're like visiting at her house. He's tanking like several rounds in a row. And it takes you like 75 minutes to play a board game with this kid. That was actually what's probably kind of like started the fight.
Was
Between
the
them.
tanking?
He's just tanking. He's got the piece in his hand and he's like got it in his mouth and he's like playing with it and he's like doesn't know where to put it and we're like, dude, you're making train routes with like plastic trains in my basement.
Well, let's do a few more poker questions, man. We're gonna wrap things up around here. I'm trying to keep these short. Of course, I never do. Someone asked a question, and I think it's a good one. Gauntlet says, "What do you think the difference in skill level between the live super high roller grinders, 5K plus, and the stars high roller grinders, 250 to $1,000 buy-ins are?"
It's really learning how to bluff and have like linear value type plays, like mixes type thing. That's the thing. Like the real at high stakes, the guys that play very well, they are very disciplined and specific with their mixes, which is a much harder strategy to execute. Like check raising top pair on low boards from the big blind, like you get a 7-5 deuce and you need to mix all these different check raises. It obviously is a harder game to play as cards roll off on the turn and river, especially when you're deep. Whereas like lower mid stakes regs, I see them just kind of take the easier approach to all those spots where they just make the check calls and the pot doesn't get complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And they have bluff catch when they're supposed to, or when they get a good run out, they get the value bet or whatever. So there's that where the good regs take more complicated lines because they know they need it for their mix in terms of having that like linear value portion. Also mixing, check raises with stuff like bottom pair, middle pair type stuff like that makes pots really complicated where you don't see as much of that from the lower stakes regs. Finding ways to bluff where which happens earlier in the street, like understanding that you need combos earlier in the street to have bluffs on different runouts.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe making some turn bets with hands that just look like total dog shit. But if you don't do them, you end up not having any bluffs on certain runouts, like 1 to a straight or 4 flush are the easiest examples. But in any, it applies to a lot of different things, if that makes sense. So basically just like a lot of different forms of aggression that doesn't necessarily mean bluffing. Turn aggression with like no equity dog shit. Like if you ever looked at, turn aggression stats from like something that's playing perfectly in like a mid stakes reg, the turn aggression is just like super telling because like there's just such huge volume of turn aggression from really good solver based play that you don't see in human play. Stuff like that. The ICM stuff they're ahead of. Multi-way stuff they're ahead too. But yeah, I would say it's just a more complex game, and they're doing 3 different things with a given hand on a street that are all the same EV, and they're mixing it very specifically.
Right. So
Like,
they throw you off balance. They're fighting for every single pot. They're not necessarily taking the easy way out in a hand. They're willing to be in more spots where you're going to feel uncomfortable. They're going to feel comfortable. They understand how to attack it from multiple different strategies, and they've studied those strategies versus other players who maybe haven't studied all those, and therefore they take the more passive route, or when they get the good runouts, then they're able to make the best decisions, make winning decisions. And
yeah, they're playing.
dealing with aggression as well, too, it sounds like, is going to... I mean, this was always a big thing for the PLO between mid-stakes, high-stakes, was just the better players could deal with the aggression better. So against weaker
Yeah, I
players,
think
you
too,
just
like,
punish them hard.
sorry. Yeah, I think the concept of just like there's so many spots in no limit that are like you have the option to check, bet 30%, bet 70%, bet 150%, and all 4 of them are part of the strategy.
Mm-hmm.
The best guys are understanding that they need to do all 4 and doing it as close to the right amount of time as they can, which is important when you're playing against another great player. It's not important at mid stakes. So that's a huge difference there, right? Like I would never do that at mid stakes. I would just do what I think is right,
Well, that's
Like,
it's harder to get better at that strategy. It's harder to learn and get better at that strategy when you don't play against players who are also doing that against you. And that's sort of what makes that jump sometimes really challenging, is that for you to understand this and implement it into your game, you have to play against other players who are also approaching it that way. And oftentimes those players aren't at those games you're playing. So it's like a whole world of adjustment and difference to be able to break through and compete against people at that level consistently.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what we've been talking about at a couple different points through this. Is just like playing against people that are better than you or more sophisticated is just makes you better, and the payment for that is they're going to confuse the shit out of you and outplay you while you're learning from them.
Right. I mean, these are all things that always attracted me about poker is how do I learn those things? How do I get better at playing against these great players, and how do I figure out what they're doing? And once you do that, I sort of like always use a mix of I test myself against the great players, and then I like beating up on the weaker players a lot just to see those strategies in action, right? It's like, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Okay, these guys, I mean, you put these guys in a world of hell and all these uncomfortable situations, especially like PLO specifically, when you're deeper stack, you just, I mean, in position, right? And people are getting a little bit better at playing out of position against in position in terms of like mid-position raise or cutoff raises versus button, but a lot of players are just super passive, super uncomfortable. They don't want to deal with the variance. They don't want to risk it. They don't want to fight for pots. And when you can identify players like that, you can just fucking pound on these guys consistently all the time until eventually they just end up making a wrong decision or they get lucky against you. And obviously those things are going to happen too. But yeah, there's a lot of room to take advantage of the weaker players in these games.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, just to sum it up, it's basically just like aggression in every spot. Like
Right.
every great player is still working towards being as aggressive as whatever they're studying, and it's like super hard to get there
Right.
because you every time you're just like, oh my god, how am I? Why am I supposed to bet with that hand? This just seems crazy,
And I think I
But
think one thing always kind of fascinated me about this was that you would be able to have that gear in your game, but at the same time, the idea of maybe you don't always take it. Sometimes you show down these plays against players, and they're like, oh well, he's not going to bet that, and then they start maybe making assumptions that are incorrect because one time or a few times you chose to make some plays. So I always think about how to work that into a strategy as well too. Because if people are just over adjusting sometimes, which better players identify that and they see you make a play and they say, okay, well, maybe that's not a normal thing he's always going to do. But against other players, if they see you make a very marginal play, they get confused and go, why the fuck would he do this sort of thing like that? And their interpretation of your game and your decisions is just, it's incorrect in some ways.
yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why I always say, like I said earlier, I mean, like use all this stuff like what we're talking about. We're basically talking about, like trying to play somewhat theory based with this aggression stuff, like, and then use that to understand what you're supposed to do, and then you look at the guys you're playing against and be like, all right, well, this guy calls too much. I know I'm supposed to be there. That's my baseline. It's all about just understanding the baseline, and then you just tweak it, right? I mean, that's the
Mm-hmm.
simplest way to put it. So the guys that are the best, they just understand the baseline the best, and then if they're really really the best, they understand the baseline really well and how everyone else is playing, and then they know how to tweak it.
Exactly. I mean, that's, I think now it's easier to know if you understand, whereas before, you weren't always sure if you understood. It's like, well, do I
Yeah,
understand? Well, my graph's going up, right? I'm understanding something, right? What exactly it is, you might not be able to quantify always, but now it's a little easier to quantify exactly what it is, why it is what it is, and therefore it makes your adjustments to exploit these people actually easier to understand too. So when I look at studying poker now, I'm like, God, these guys have it fucking easy, man. This is like,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it, it's it,
I'm
it's yeah, and more of the challenge is like taking away, like getting deeper in the lab with the study software and finding out, okay, how can this apply here? How can I remember these things better? How can I put these hand groupings together in my head? These seem to be like the newer challenges with studying with the software.
Yeah, I think I have a lot of respect for the guys that were like inventing plays or figuring stuff out and like auto profit stuff out in like Excel, or potentially even made their own little janky like solvers or whatever the hell they did. Like those guys, that's sick because we just have so many tools now, and that obviously makes the legwork a lot easier. Also, keeping you sane, like,
Oh yeah,
I mean, just like you bluff it off, and then later on you don't have to fucking text 9 people and be like, hey, was this all right? And then 4 of them are like, no, that's dog shit, and 5 of them are like, oh yeah, 100%, it's great. You know what I mean? That's what it was before. You're texting your buddies that you respect, and you're like, I had this hand and against this guy, and I did this, and everyone's like, you suck, or that's great. Now you're just like, it couldn't have been that bad. Like, and then I can like tweak the assumptions a little bit against what I think the guy's doing, and then it's like, all right, yeah, it's okay, it's worth about zero, or it was actually good. You got something to keep you not going crazy, like
right.
lets you sleep at night. Like having some answers is pretty fucking nice. When
Yeah,
you,
I kind of I don't I actually understand talking with Doug a lot more recently, kind of about him coming back and learning Hold'em. He says like, oh, a lot of these guys like just they all got so much better, and the way I think about it is that previous in kind of early PLO or Hold'em days, people just didn't know how to understand and handle aggression. I think you put it quite well. It's just that's how I would explain the difference between mid and high stakes is that the better players can handle aggression in all the spots much better. And now the programs are teaching you what hands to continue with versus aggression, whereas before you didn't know, oh, I continue with that part of my range, I start re-raising these hands. Like you just had to figure that shit out. And a lot of weaker
right,
players, they just couldn't. Instead of figuring that out, they go, I'll just fold. I'll continue at the top of my range. I might work this in here if I think he's raising me too much, but that's about it. That's going to be the way I'm going to battle against that aggressive strategy. Whereas now people are understanding, well, I continue with this, that, and then on turn I do this, that. So it's a lot easier to handle aggression, and it's also easier to understand how to handle that aggression. So now you have to sort of figure out, okay, well, and what I notice now playing against the weaker players still is they have no idea how to handle aggression. Like, I mean, you're always going to, and this is why you have to learn how to be an aggressive player yourself, is because once you can do that and once you understand why you're doing what you're doing and how it works, those weaker players, they never get better at this. They just,
Right. Yeah.
they're always bad at handling aggression. And I think that's a perfect way that kind of you put it, is just how can we sum it up into like an actionable thing for someone, is just understand how to be more aggressive in situations.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the things that really good players do well, they're very subtle, and they add up to a lot of money over the course of the year or 2 years or whatever. And a lot of the mistakes that the weaker players make, or non-pros, they're mistakes that you would never identify by yourself. You know what I mean? Like unless a pro watches your hand history, like you just it just folds to you in the small blind, and you just fold Jack four off, and you're like, okay, cool. Like that's a shitty hand. I folded. Let's move
Mm-hmm.
on to the next one. All these little micro things, they add up to a lot. Like you don't check call wide enough with backdoors. You don't do all these different raises you're supposed to, because you're comfortable. You're sitting, you know what I mean? So like you're doing the easy stuff, and it doesn't feel like it's not even something you would ask your buddies about. These mistakes, like the mistakes that we used to make before, are like, I torched this. Like it's a real hand that you played. It's a big pot, and that's what you ask your buddies about. These little micro mistakes where you're just not continuing wide enough ever, all
Mm-hmm.
day, every Sunday, playing X amount of buy-ins, they add up. You never see it yourself. You're just playing too tight, and there's no way for you to identify it yourself without the solver, right? So back in the day, like that's just the people that are just intuitively good at stuff like that. I mean, that's very mathematical, but it's like, they were probably way better than the people that weren't. And now it's getting closer, but still, like if you don't do the studying, like all the mistakes that you're making, they're really small. They add up to a lot. You're never going to recognize them yourself.
Yeah, it's a great way to put it. I mean, that's a really great way. How would you ever know? Right? You think, oh, okay, like you don't even identify that you're playing too tight in these situations. You don't identify, oh, I should have raised that hand, because
You're
it intuitively
supposed to
doesn't come up
raise
in,
it.
in your thought process. And if you don't review it or go over it or studying it, you never really pick up on those kind of things.
You think people are gonna? Sorry, not to keep harping on it, but it's like, okay, button opens, you call a big blind, the flop's like Jack 5-5 with a flush draw.
Mm-hmm.
You think people are gonna just like fold Queen X Deuce with the Queen of the flush draw card and be like, think about it ever again?
No, probably not,
No,
right?
but it's like pure raise, right? So it's just like shit like that. You just never figure it out yourself before the solver. If you don't do the work, you'll never figure it out. This is
Mm-hmm.
like, it's just these things you just toss in the muck that are supposed to be part of your strategy, and it's just endless examples of those, and they're not worth a lot. But when you add it up, then it's just like, oh, well, this guy just never has bluffs.
Mm-hmm. And I would
You know?
imagine as strategy progresses, as here's kind of what I see happening. I see that right now we have new technologies, new software to use. People are still getting better at using these softwares, because using the programs and taking things away from the programs is a skill on its own. That has to evolve. That people and someone has to put up a course, and then strategies say, okay, this is the best way to do it, and then people talk and they improve on those strategies, and that's still far away to me, what I see. So what I
Mm-hmm.
see happening is that the average skill level player, average, regular, whatever, they're going to keep raising up slightly in skill level, and they're going to bring up the bottom tier with them too. So these things right now, they're not as common, but eventually they'll be more common. So if you learn them now, you end up being ahead of the curve. Now we could debate, well, maybe they won't be that common at some point in time too. Maybe that point is just years away. And in my head, I think, well, that's sort of the question I have, is how long will it take for these things to trickle down? Right? We,
I
we
think
knew we knew 2x was a good 2.2x is a good raise size. People were 5xing before. It took them a while
Yeah,
to know. Now
yeah.
people aren't 5xing, except you go to the Golden
Um,
Nugget tournament, they are. So that was kind of those kind of things I think about when I think about the evolution of poker strategy.
right. I do agree that there will be. I, there already are people are obviously like doing the solver work for people, and selling it for pretty low prices compared to any stakes, kind of. Um, and then there will be a course based on how to use a solver. I try to bake that into mine a little bit, but like it's whatever. And then, but it goes back to the earlier question that I answered, which is it's still like so much work, so much memorization.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have to play poker. You have to be playing six tables on Sunday and execute it.
Mm-hmm.
You need to make sure you're not doing stuff too much. Like you need to understand when people don't continue as wide as they're supposed to. So like you check raise the flop, and the solver says you're supposed to block the turn or bet the turn, but this person isn't continuing with all this unpaired shit that they're supposed to. So there's no block on the turn versus this guy because he plays like a normal player, not like the computer.
Mm-hmm.
So all of this stuff, like you node lock and PO take some of this stuff out. The strategy, the shape of the strategies can be completely different just because it's more likely than not that your average opponent, especially at lower or mid stakes, is playing way closer to some sort of idea of what you think a tight human plays against than the computer. And if you put that kind of assumption in the machine, it comes out way different, and you're just gonna like kind of be torching it if you're playing pure solver.
You're describing the exact issue that the kid Landon, 21-year-old kid that I do some work with too. He's working a lot at Hold'em, playing a lot of 10-20 online and playing a lot of live, and that's exactly the issue he's having. I go, listen, you don't just follow the solver exactly how it says, right? You got to understand, like, not everyone's necessarily, because he's still learning, he's still new to the game, really. He's like a year into the game, but he's going to be on the podcast next week. The kid's a fucking future god of the game, but he's still learning that aspect of things, which just takes time to learn. And a lot of these kids that are learning through the solver, learning poker and getting better with the solver, they don't know this. And that's because we learned this stuff years ago. So it's kind of like the way that they learn now. They're not learning exploit. They're learning just solver. So they kind of have to go and learn the exploit, which is reverse of what old school players, we learn a lot of exploitive, and now we have to learn more solver. So it's kind of like this. It's very fascinating to me kind of see what's happening with the younger generation of poker players and how they're learning and how they're going to do. I think they're going to do great, man. I think these kids are going to crush it because they're coming up.
You got guys like Ali and Adamo that they clearly they're way younger than us. They're like, I don't even know, they're like 23 or something.
Mm-hmm.
They're like 10 years younger than us, and they learned way quicker, and they're just as good. Like, they're playing really sick in these high buy-ins, and you know they have really good poker minds. They adapt really well, and then you see other young guys that are hopping in really high stakes because they think they studied the solver. And then you just see them make like calls, bluffs, different stuff. And you're like, dude, that was like, sure, it's whatever. It's okay in the solver world. Like, that guy's never bluffing.
Right.
You just called with 0% chance to win with like a really good bluff catcher, but like you were going to win 0. You know what I mean? So like it's just like, yeah, you got to understand what's going on in the game. Yeah. And the best guys, even the best young guys, like I said, Ali Adamo, like they make great adjustments, and like you never see them make kind of mistakes like that. But there's other guys that are young, clearly following the solver shit, making horrible bluffs, making horrible calls against players where that just like, you know, they're not, the ranges aren't the same. So.
Fred said earlier, he said this seems like gold. And you know, I saved the actual strategy talk for a couple hours in the podcast. Listen, if you're still watching, I'll reward them I'll reward you guys with some real good strategy talking here. So, because I personally love talking strategy. It's just always on the podcast. You know, I never know how deep I want to get into it. Sometimes, right? It's like I don't know. I like the more casual kind of stuff, but people love the in-depth strategy, so we try to give them a little in-depth strategy. I know you love the in-depth strategy too. I know you kind of love this.
Oh
stuff.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. And I'm basically at the peak. I mean, I've been playing every day and studying every day right now, so I'm loving poker.
So how do you think you can keep this success? I mean, to me, right, when I look at tournaments, right, outside perspective, I would just say, like, I would try to find ways to minimize the variance. What I always try to do when I play cash games, like, I try to say, okay, I think my variance is a lot lower than most cash game PLO regulars are. It's just because I think I've found out ways where I can reduce variance in some ways. And maybe the argument is that, well, you don't take every plus EV spot, but at the same time, my variance is a lot lower. And then there's the question of, well, if you're not playing every spot the best you can, then is that worth it in terms of having the variance? And to me, it isn't. I've just decided that a while ago that I'm fine with that. And when I look at the tournament, the way people approach tournaments, and like you're mentioning, you're rebuying, 7 big lines under the gun. To me, that just seems kind of fucking stupid. But to other tournament players who I respect them a lot, they're like, no, that's what we got to do. We got to keep rebuying. Like, this is how you have to do it. So do you think there's some ways that you could potentially improve your approach to actually registering, choosing, right, like those sorts of things in order to maybe minimize the variance a little bit less?
Yeah, like I said before, like sometimes you can just do it by accident. Like you think you're gonna get a certain seat, and then you register, and then you're under the gun, and you're like, "Fuck!" And that's gonna happen a few times a year if you're not paying attention. But in terms of variance stuff, I think you manage obviously your pieces and stuff. Like if you ever feel like you're
So the
plus
pieces,
EV,
okay, the piece is really important. Okay.
if you feel like you're plus EV in a tournament, but you don't want to fire max bullets, and it's like a reasonable amount of dollars that you're plus EV, like you're probably playing too high. Um, you know what I mean? Like just
Mm-hmm.
because like if you're in a 5K and you bust and you perceive your next bullet to be worth 500 bucks, but you're like, oh, if I fire this one, I could be in for four. You're probably playing too high.
Interesting.
You
Okay.
know, because if your average bullet in that tournament should be 2.5 bullets, like you want to reach that average because you're making that much more money. If you take your average bullet from 2.5 to 1.5 or whatever because you just do your first bullet and the last one, you're not making as much money as you can. What to your point, if your best games that you can play, like you're saying you want to alleviate variance in your cash game, you have a strategy for that. If the games that you can play where you make the most money are still a little bit too high, where you don't want to just be like blasting off every bluff that's worth like 0.02 of the pot
Mm-hmm.
on the river, um, but you can't sell for it and you have to play it, but like a huge downswing is going to hurt your ability to play it, you don't really need those bluffs to get paid when you have value hands. That sounds fine,
Right.
right? Like if you can avoid it, if you're getting paid, you don't need the bluffs. If the guys aren't overfolding an insane amount where the bluff is actually worth a lot, like a big part of your bottom line, and you want to pass some of these super thin spots, or you want to pass like squeezing all in pre-flop or whatever on some of the super thin spots, and it's not going to affect you too much. And if you do this really aggressive like style where you're trying to max out and it's going to affect your ability to make money in the future because your downswing is so hard, I think that's the answer.
Mm-hmm.
But if the downswing isn't going to affect your ability to earn in the future, if you're playing within your stakes, if you never want to like cut, like people have like a bad attitude about these like rebuys. They're like, oh my god, this guy's in for 6 bullets, like he's crazy, what a spew. It's like every fucking bullet's worth the same if he's playing good,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Mm-hmm.
So why not get in there?
Is there ever a time where, right, if you're not in the right headspace, right, we could say, okay, every bullet's worth the same. And I guess that's a personal thing. That's a self-awareness thing. You have to understand if you think that you play the same way on your sixth bullet versus your first bullet, right? Then you rebuy this six. That can't be the case for a lot of these people out there. I don't see how that's possible. Maybe it is, but I don't see how it's possible, right? Like some
I
guys
mean,
have to be
look,
playing a bit
like
worse, especially when the variance goes up, the stacks are down. I would imagine we're gonna because these rebuys are new things. These haven't been regular around for a long time. So I imagine the strategy to approach rebuys is also evolving right now too. And that maybe we say right now everything's worth the same. Maybe 4 years from now we say, well, maybe it wasn't worth the same, right? Like I
uh,
envision a scenario where that could happen.
yeah, there's definitely some stuff that goes into it, right? So like a few factors. You have what the field is, which obviously dictates your ROI, like the softness. Then you actually kind of get to see what table you're going to get, right? So like, or what position,
Mm-hmm.
or either or. So it's like, oh, if I register right now, I'm going to get either like the sick table with the fish in a bad position, or I'm going to get the button. So I'm going to register because they're both really good. Uh, how deep are you, and what's the rake? Like, how good am I at 30 big blinds versus this field? If I'm really good at 30 big blinds and still 5% rake, I'll probably just hop in.
Mm-hmm.
Is it, all really tough players and I'm about to register in the middle position? That's the only open seat and I'm going to have 16 blinds. Maybe I'll wait. I'll sit there and look and see what opens up. Can I snipe the button? Okay, now I'll register. Uh, is this a tournament that late reg is going to have a massive premium on the stack, meaning you're going to be so close to the money that if you were to pull up an ICM calculator, If it's a 5K buy-in, it's going to value your stack at 5,600. Okay, then I don't want to put in any of these bullets that are worth like 1% when I can get that 10% premium later on. Um, so, all stuff like that where the ICM premium stuff is pretty fake because it's kind of based on the fact that you can cash it out right away. So you can't just be like, okay, it's registering now, it's worth 5,600 because you're not instantly in the money. There's future stuff where it's like you're going to play the bubble like shit
Mm-hmm.
because you're going to be short a lot, all this other stuff. Your future EV is pretty bad, but you're so close to the money that you always have a little bit of a premium. So there's certain cases where waiting until last minute reg might be the best thing. Is it ever going to be the best thing in like a WPT main because you just don't want to be in for 6 bullets? You don't fire the middle stage? Probably not if you're
Probably not.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like you just have to pick and choose. There's never going to be a rule because every single case is individual.
Mm-hmm.
Even on Sunday tomorrow, the best players in the field are going to pick and choose their re-entries. They're not going to snap re-enter. So like every single tournament is different, and it's about field strength, position you're going to reg into, stack depth, ICM premium stuff. That's pretty much it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. A lot to consider in there. I guess then some sites are trying to say, well, then how do we take it? How do we remove these options for players, right? How do you remove the idea of game selection, and how do you remove the idea of players trying to take every edge that they can? And that seems to be the evolution from an operator standpoint, is they're saying, okay, well, we understand that players want to put themselves in the most plus EV spots every time, but we want to limit that because it isn't necessarily fair to other players who aren't thinking about that stuff. So that seems to be like the evolution on the operator side of how do we put a stop to people
Yeah.
looking for those type of things too. So it's like this player side who are being taught that you want to take every plus EV spot, and then the operators are like, well, we want to cut some of those, we want to take away some of those edges, and there's this like battle on both sides where they're trying to constantly look for the edge.
Yeah, you want to be you want to be look you want to make a seeding script that works in a way that's purely random no matter what. So it would have to be a complicated algorithm. For a simple example, say there's like there's 15 people left in an 8-handed table tournament, and there's one seat at the right-handed table. They made it now so if you register, you're not guaranteed. I think you're not guaranteed to get. Okay. So right now, what it is, you're guaranteed to get the table, or that's open, but not the seat or something.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, what they need to do is they need to make it so that when you register, everyone gets shuffled. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they're not fit. These tables aren't fixed where there's an open seat. Like everything needs to get when you register, all the people need to get moved around. So like it completely mixes up when you register, so that you can't just snipe a seat, or you can't just. I think right now you get the table where there's an open seat, but not this exact seat.
Okay, so they kind of make that random, yeah.
So you can't just like, oh, that's my seat.
Right, exactly, yeah.
But or if
Makes
there's a
sense.
table open on each seat, you'll on each table you'll get one of them or whatever. But they need to make it reshuffle everything. But obviously that's probably like super expensive to do because they haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It seems like GG's kind of trying to figure out things like that, or trying to come up with solutions like that. Obviously, they were in the news for this whole confiscation of the guy's winnings, and he made a big deal out of it, and that story came out, and players are outraged, and information's being put out there. So did you follow that at all? Did you see get a chance to see that at all?
Ike gave me a rundown yesterday. Yeah, it sounds, if the facts are just that the kid was just playing and his natural eight was banned before, and then he got on GG and they let him play, and then he started winning. I mean, if that's the case, then yeah, it doesn't sound fair. I don't like an environment where it's like the Wild West and the sites can just kind of do whatever they want. I have. This is gonna sound. I might catch some shit for this, but if sites, like, it's their right to kind of ban people. I have no issue if sites want to like be like, hey, we don't like what you're up to, you're out. But they can't do that and also confiscate money. If sites want to be like, hey, we don't like you, take your money and get away, get out of here. We think you're up to something sketchy, but we can't prove it or whatever. Like, it's not great, but it's not really breaking any rules. Like, they don't have any allegiance to us to like. I feel like we poker players, we have the wrong idea where it's like, I deserve to play on every single site. This is bull. You know what I mean? Like, they're kind of providing service, and sure, if they want to tell us to fuck off, they can, but they can't also steal the money.
Yeah, it seems like in this scenario, right, they tell this guy, we don't want you here, you're bum hunting, okay? So you're only playing against weaker players in games, you're not giving action to other players, we don't want you here. The guy comes back, he makes other account, allegedly gets verified in some way, and they're disputing that whole verification process, so I've got more information, I've talked with them at length about this, tried to discuss it, and they're very adamant that you have to disincentivize these people from creating more accounts when they're banned, otherwise more people are going to come back, and then should every player that then gets banned and comes back and wins, should they be allowed to all keep their money? So I can understand that argument as well, too. So it's I don't know what the solution necessarily is. If you're banned from a site and you come back, even if he says he didn't know it was a new site, he didn't know it was the same network, okay? Once again, I've talked with him before. I find it hard to believe. He says it's true, okay? So I can agree you didn't know necessarily.
That sounds wild.
That's what I said. I said, 2016, 2019. If I'm ever banned from a site, I know all the sites I played. I can maybe understand, but this is like one of the biggest sites now. So I have some sort of reason to doubt that necessarily, but I can go with it. And let's say he didn't know. Then to me, at first I was saying, okay, maybe we give the guy the money back. And I think more about it, I'm just not really sure, because if you give this guy the money back, you got to give all the other players the money back. I just think the verification system needs to be a lot better if you got to be able to cross-check these things. I don't think they are. I don't think they want to do that. I don't think they care. I think they're only doing this when it comes down to, okay, we had to do this for some whatever reason. We found he was banned. We took his money away. I
don't know enough about it to speak on it. My opinion is what I said. Like, I don't like to see people getting their money confiscated. I do consulting work for Poker King.
Mm-hmm.
Similar stuff happens there, but they're kind of I think they're doing like a ton of work on game security, game integrity, trying to get machine learning developed that detects non-human play. So a lot of really big steps going on that site, WePoker and Poker King, where they're trying to develop some really advanced software to detect non-human play, like segregate player pools based on pros and non-pros, and just kind of figure out where everybody's at, so that this system with the verification, make sure no one's banned incorrectly, like just kind of make sure it's really clean. And they got a really good team of people working on that now. So I think that a step in that direction, where you kind of just have certain data points, where both circumstantial and also just like raw data, where that's how you detect login times, locations, whatever, like that's how you detect people that always only or have like kind of like a predatory sort of presence on the site. And if sites want to run, if they want to run games where they don't want people that are predatory, like that's their right? There's no one said that they have to let us play. But like I said, at the end of the day, you don't want to be taking people's money, because that's just kind of, I think banning them and not taking the money. But yeah, like you said, I didn't really think about it that way. And also, if they did this, there's probably some behind the scenes stuff that we don't know about. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point, right? Like, what's the evolution come to here, right? Because now we're establishing site, and we could argue this should have happened a long time ago, where you want to get rid of this predatory behavior. If a guy's only watching the lobby, plays in a soft game, quits, and doesn't give any other action outside of when that game runs, do you want, and that player isn't a content creator, they're not a streamer, they're not promoting poker, they're not getting themselves out there, do you give a fuck about that player or not? GG's saying, we don't care about that player. We don't want that player here. So then the player might say, well, I'll change my behaviors, I won't do that, or I don't know. Then they got to plead their case. Once they're banned, they can't necessarily do that. They're shit out of luck on the other side. So then that's the question, is that the evolution of how this works? Because I think that the site should have put a stop to this stuff way earlier in a lot of ways. Like, you should have, if a guy's only doing that, not battling, not playing at all, you probably don't want that sort of behavior on a poker site. When I think about a poker site, I wouldn't want someone who only shows up, hunts all the bad players, takes their money and leaves, doesn't do anything else. I don't see that guy being very valuable to a poker site.
Right. And I
So
just think, yeah, like this entitlement of regs to say that they should be allowed to again, I'm not talking about this specific case. In general, there is no entitlement. Like these businesses have no allegiance to us. Like like I said, like they if they don't like what you're doing, they can tell you they can tell you can't play. It's not good for their ecosystem. You're not doing, So yeah, and like certain sites, I mean, they at the lower stakes where they make a bunch of money and stuff, like they have no problem running their sites with no regs, especially in the China markets. So like,
yeah, I mean,
telling,
it sucks for regulars though, right? Because I empathize with these guys a lot. It's like, well, what these guys are professional poker players. They make a living. What are they supposed to do? They've been taught to approach poker this way. They've been taught to game select. Everyone else, their peers have been seat scripted and using all these scripts, bum hunting players. Like this is how they've been doing things for a while. How do you go back to a different way and not approach things that way? How do you turn your VP up to 40, 45 BPIB? How do you give action? How do you take minus EV spots when you're not used to doing things that way? Those are tough questions to figure out. And luckily now there are still plenty of places to still play cash games where you can do your behavior. You can do these kind of things and approach things this way. But I would encourage the regulars out there to start thinking, okay, well, if this becomes a normal thing, what am I going to do? Am I going to quit? Am I going to evolve? Am I going to go outside of this?
I mean, Zoom is a pretty good, uh, that was a good answer to it. I mean, just having like a player pool that's all shared. If you want to have, I've heard interesting ideas like having tiers that are only allowed to play against each other.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally cool, and having a few seats open at all times for people that want to jump in. Having like there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. But yeah, I mean, I think just kind of having a player pool that in some way or another, whether it's Zoom or whether it's having an all reg table that kind of battles, but there's always a seat open and, somebody can hop in or whatever like that to enable the players that want to play for fun to just hop into high stakes, but the game, the other guys have to keep the game running. I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, battling isn't appealing for regulars. I think still it's fine. I think it should be allowed to play games where you think you're winning and not play games where you think you're losing. And
Mm-hmm.
if they catch you or if they don't like what you're doing, like I've already said a bunch of times, they can ban you, but they shouldn't be able to take your money.
I agree. I think the whole
You
taking the
should be
money
able to
part thing,
kind of
yeah.
free roll yourself on that route. Like you should be able to just be like, all right, I'm going to play all the games that are good on this site as well as I can, for as long as I can. And if they don't like it in the end, like I guess I'm done on GG, but like I should never have to worry about my money being taken because I just played in good games.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like, let them play as long as they want, and let them hunt games as long as they want, and then if GG notices a pattern they don't like, it's their right to shower you. Just like give the guy the money, give him the money, unless they intentionally broke the rules. Which the reason why this case is a little weird is just because of the semantics between.
Right,
like,
exactly. You
the
don't know if
account
it's some
change.
sort of intentional sort of thing like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it's a complicated case. I mean, people aren't happy. I mean, a lot of these things, right? It might be what should they do, shouldn't they do? But then it's, well, what is the customer going to think? Right? If your customers out there, if these people that don't know much about this situation, they say, okay, this site took this player's money. We don't agree with that. Whether GG makes a good case for it or not, the players out there who are seeing this say, well, now this is the site we're going to say this site takes the money from players. Like, you don't necessarily want to get that reputation as a poker site if you're trying to be something that is trying to be known as one of the top poker sites in the world, right? Like, that doesn't seem to me, but maybe they don't.
I think probably they just don't care because you're still going to be able to be one of the top sites in the world with all the people that know that they're not pros, that they're not predatory, and that they're not worried about getting their money stolen, right? Like, it's a pretty select group of guys that should be worried about getting banned and their money confiscated for predatory behavior, right? The rest of this traffic on these sites, which is just massive, just people hopping in and playing. They're not doing anything wrong. They don't even fucking know about this shit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know? Like they're not worried if you're not doing anything similar to that, you're not worried about getting your money taken because you're like, well, I don't know. I just kind of like get home from work and hop in the game. Like they're probably not going to take my money.
Yeah, I mean that's a good way to look at it too, right? It's like you don't necessarily want those players, but those players also, right? Some players just they don't want to play on a site that might take their money, even if they don't know that their money's not going to get taken. They might think, well, maybe I'll do something wrong, and they're just going to take my money now too because they took this guy's money, not realizing that it's a completely
Yeah,
different situation. So just the
yeah.
that whole
Definitely
part
don't
of
want
that.
it. You definitely don't want it near you as a site just to be confiscated money. It's kind of it can scare everybody. That's why I think you should be allowed to ban people, but don't be confiscating unless you have like clear evidence that they're cheating or doing something that is compromising game integrity.
And that's what it seems. That's what it seems like to me. Is they think that he was doing that. They banned him initially. He came back. That was compromising the integrity. It's in their terms and conditions to be able to.
Right, because then it's like, okay, we already told you that we don't like what you're doing, and now you came back under a different name. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, that's what it seems like to me.
yeah, I wish the guy all the best, and I hope it gets resolved. I'm total yeah I have no opinion on that one because I just don't know enough about it.
Yeah, it's still early stages of development with what's going to happen here. So I think people are just learning about GG. They've got new rules. Their rules aren't like Poker Stars. Their rules aren't like, right? They're not like Party Poker. They're bringing a new approach to things, right? It's not going to necessarily be popular by some players out there who are used to the old way of doing things, and then GG has to lay what their vision out is, right? They have a vision for things. They have a way to solve some of these problems that they see as problems, and they need to be able to communicate that better with the poker world if they want to. If they don't care about that, then they don't have to do it.
Right.
So, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting. It's an interesting thing, but it's a big story now. So I ask you about it. People
But
in the chat want to know about it. So
they're great for poker right now. GG. I mean, that's a lot of action, a lot of huge stakes volume. I mean, without GG, a lot of high stakes regs would have nothing to play right now.
yeah, I mean that's what it seems to me too, right? I look at negative, I look at positive. I see positive things happening with the network, and they have positive goals and things they'd like to do. So then you have to figure out, okay, well, there's negative, there's positive. Where do we stand on that, and how do we fix the negative? Is the negative that negative, right? Like those are all sort of questions that the poker world has to ask themselves, I think. And
Yeah, I think I mean, other things too. The software is great. Every time I message support, they instantly reply. Like talk to Bryn and stuff. Like it's just easy kind of get things done. I've had nothing but good experience with them, and
yeah,
I have no reason to say that if it wasn't true.
yeah, I think other players out there feel the same way too. So it's not that everyone has these negative experiences. Some people do have negative stories, and I've been getting a lot of messages from but I get all kinds of crazy fucking messages too now. So now I start helping some of these people out with their cases, and now the messages have turned up.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's tough. Like I only consult like do random stuff with Poker King, like little projects, coaching projects, security videos. Like I have nothing to do with like whatever banning accounts or anything that like that. I'm just kind of like a consultant, right? And I get messages from people like, dude, why'd you steal my money? Like I was like, dude, I got nothing to do with it, man. Like I'm sure, I promise you they're doing a good job. They're working really hard, but it wasn't me.
That's a tough part when you're involved with this stuff as an ambassador, as a consultant, or as an associate. Is that if something happens on the site, the people then expect you to have a knowledgeable and informed take on the situation and also be able to help them out with their problem. And if you don't help them out, they blame the problem on you, whether you had any activity with it or not. And I think that's what comes along with these sort of things.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And it's a tough spot because you feel for the guys and you never know each individual case. But I mean, it hasn't been too much. But I'm sure you're getting a bunch now.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna be the main consultant here on this case probably.
Oh, it's just interesting, right? I mean, it's interesting to deal with, right? You want to help these guys out with their problems, but at the same time, some of these people you kind of understand. They put themselves in an issue. They put themselves in a situation. They made a mistake, and what can you do about some of these things, right? So,
Yeah, I mean, yeah. The
tough.
last thing I would say is that obviously every guy, guilty or not, they're coming with like full head of steam, the best story you've ever heard of why they're innocent, right? So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
exactly. They're never saying like, I did it, give me the money back. It's like I didn't do it. Here's
yeah,
why I didn't do it, sort of thing like that. And then you have to then decipher that and figure it out and weigh both sides of the argument and
yeah. So that's tough.
you know.
So
So, all right, give me your number one piece of poker advice, Nick. Give it to the people out there. If they're still watching, I might make this a little clip for them one day. It might be all these like great clips. Give them number one piece of poker advice, Nick. What do you got for them out there?
Don't play or study when you don't want to.
Define don't want to.
That's my advice. That's why I think I've been able to play for so long and improve, because I only learned this recently about like fitness or whatever, which is a stupid kind of analogy, but it's just like if you put in like a huge amount of hours when you don't want to, or like you're not feeling great or whatever, it just takes away like 3 days in the future that you could have played or you could have studied,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like you feel like you're sacrificing the one day. You might actually end up torching it and actually causing more harm than good to just your future. But like, even if you play and like you break even and nothing bad happens, you still cost yourself a few days of like fresh, really good work where you're either playing crushing or you're either crushing study. When you force to study, you force to play when you don't want to, just because you like set this goal for yourself or you set a schedule for yourself, or it's Sunday and like you have to, you just do more harm than good, in my opinion. I don't subscribe to the mentality where it's like, gotta grind, gotta like, if you don't want, like, eventually it's gonna catch up with you somewhere. And so like, and when you want to play, you enjoy it. Makes you play better, makes you more eager to learn, makes you more eager to check spots you had, take note, whatever you're doing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just being there, you got 4 tables that you don't want to be at, you're watching Netflix on the side or whatever, like sports. It happens to everybody, but that's it's not real technical advice, but it's definitely helped me a lot, I think.
I think I like it a lot, man. It's just take breaks, right? Self-awareness, realize when you're feeling it, when you're in the zone, when you're not in the zone. If you
want to play for, it doesn't mean you have to take breaks. If you want to play for 20 days straight, if you feel it every day, play. But then when you don't force it.
Right. I like that a lot, man. Guys in the chat, if you want to watch Nick's final table performance, check it out on my channel. It's on my channel from yesterday. Me and Hollywood Haxton broke it down. And the tournament course, links in the description below if you want to check that out too. And yeah, man, we'll be paying attention. We'll see how you do in these high stakes games. I'll be reporting on that for people, let people know how you've been doing. And that's what we got.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Everybody in the chat, I enjoyed all the comments. We had a lot of great people up there. Van Shark Tank, thanks guys. You rock. Made my day better. Listen, man, that's what we're going for here. Hoping to talk some poker, have a great conversation, and hope you guys learn something, enjoy something. And I'll be back soon. Monday, might have a video. Tuesday, for sure, I'm posting up a vlog with Landon, 21-year-old kid. Wednesday, Doug Polk podcast. Thursday, podcast with Landon. Him and Doug are playing heads up on Wednesday. And then next Friday, WPT breakdown show. So that's what I got. Peace out, guys. Take care.
Sweet.
Much love.